Some letters just arrive, but this one landed on my doormat like a calculated trap. When I picked up the white envelope stamped Internal Revenue Service, I knew the $247,000 debt inside was not a clerical error. It was a move. My parents banked on my panic, expecting me to crawl back home to fix it as a family. They never expected I would turn their shadow games into an official paper trail and let the system finish them. My name is Stella Stewart, and until 4:45 in the afternoon on a Tuesday in October, I believed that my life was entirely my own. I lived in a one-bedroom apartment on the third floor of a converted brick building in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I paid my rent on the first of every month. I had a credit score of 780. I separated my recycling. I did not have debts that I did not sign for. But when I stepped out of the elevator and walked down the hallway, the air felt different. It was the kind of heavy, static silence that usually precedes a thunderstorm, even though the sky outside the hallway window was a flat, harmless gray. I stopped in front of door 3B. There was a white envelope leaning against the doorframe. It had not been slid underneath. It had not been jammed into the crack. It had been placed there. It was set down with a terrifying degree of precision, aligned perfectly with the edge of the molding, as if someone had measured the angle before walking away. The return address in the upper left corner was simple, black, and unmistakable. Internal Revenue Service. My keys were in my hand, the metal biting into my palm. I did not unlock the door immediately. I stared at the envelope. Most people feel a flicker of anxiety when they see that government font, a worry that they messed up a deduction or forgot a form. I did not feel anxiety. I felt a strange, cold drop in the temperature of my blood. I knew, with a certainty that settled in the pit of my stomach like wet concrete, that this was not a mistake. This was not a random audit. I picked it up. It felt light, but it carried a spiritual density that made my wrist ache. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and locked it behind me. I did not take off my coat. I did not turn on the lights, even though the late afternoon shadows were stretching long across my living room floor. I walked straight to the kitchen island, placed the envelope on the granite counter, and used a small paring knife to slice it open. I did not rip it. I wanted the edges clean. I pulled out the letter. The header was standard. The date was from 3 days ago. And then, there was the box on the right side. The one that is designed to stop your heart. Amount due. $247,000. I read it again. I read it out loud to the empty room, my voice sounding thin and foreign. $247,000. I looked for the error. I looked for a misspelled middle name, a wrong social security number, a different address. I looked for any sign that this was intended for a different Stella Stewart. But there it was, my full name, Stella Marie Stewart. It was printed with the indifferent accuracy of a machine that does not make up stories. My eyes scanned down the page, skipping over the dense paragraphs of codes and statutes until they snagged on a sentence that made the hair on my arms stand up. The United States government has the right to seize your property or rights to property. I stopped breathing for a moment. I did not own much. I drove a 5-year-old sedan. I rented this apartment. I had a savings account that would barely cover 3 months of rent if I lost my job. I did not have property in the traditional sense, but the letter did not just say property, it said rights to property. That was the phrase that terrified me. Rights to property meant my future. It meant my wages before they even hit my bank account. It meant my ability to sign a lease, to take out a loan for a car, to have a background check run for a new job without a red flag waving in the face of the hiring manager. It meant my autonomy. It meant that I was no longer a free citizen operating in the economy. I was a target. I was an asset to be liquidated. For a moment, the room spun. The edges of my vision blurred, a physiological panic response trying to take over. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. $247,000. That was not a mistake. That was a house. That was a lifetime of savings. That was a ruinous, insurmountable wall. I closed my eyes and forced myself to inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and exhale for 4 seconds. Panic is a luxury I could not afford. Panic is what they wanted. I opened my eyes and looked at the letter again. This time, I looked at it not as a victim, but as an analyst. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking, just a fraction, but I steadied them against the edge of the counter. I took a picture of the first page. I flipped it. I took a picture of the second page. I took a close-up of the reference number. I took a close-up of the date. I ensured the lighting was even. I ensured every digit was legible. Then, I put the phone down and looked at my kitchen. There was a coffee cup in the sink from the morning. There was a stack of mail on the side table. I needed control. I walked to the sink and washed the coffee cup. I dried it and put it away. I walked to the side table and straightened the magazines. I went to the bathroom and washed my hands with hot water and soap, scrubbing until the skin was pink. Washing away the invisible residue of the hallway, the envelope, the day. I needed to be clean. I needed the environment to be sterile. I walked back to the kitchen, pulled out my laptop, and opened it on the table. The screen glowed blue in the dim room. I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it simply IRS. I sat down. The silence in the apartment was deafening. I knew who did this. The knowledge wasn't a deduction. It was an instinct. Honed by years of surviving a household where love was a currency and truth was a fluid concept. I knew why the envelope had come now. I knew why the amount was so specific. I picked up my phone again. I stared at the contact name. Mom. I pressed call. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the table next to the terrifying letter. I needed my hands free. I needed to type. The phone rang twice. Stella! My mother's voice burst through the speaker, bright and sugary. It was the voice she used when she was hosting a dinner party, or when she was trying to sell a membership to the community center. It was a performance. Hi, Mom, I said. My voice was flat. I kept my eyes on the laptop screen, watching the cursor blink. We were just talking about you, Elaine Stewart said. Your father was just saying we haven't seen you in almost 3 weeks. Are you eating enough? You sound tired. I'm not tired, I said. I'm holding a letter from the IRS. There was a pause. It was a short pause, maybe half a second. But in that half second, the air in the room seemed to condense. It wasn't the silence of confusion. It was the silence of a breath being held. Oh, Elaine said. The pitch of her voice went up. A letter? What kind of letter? It says I owe the government $247,000. I said. I waited. I expected a scream. I expected, that's impossible. I expected, oh my God, Stella, are you okay? Instead, I heard a rustling sound on the other end, and then my father's voice cut in. He must have been sitting right next to her, listening. It's a mistake, Gordon Stewart said. His voice was immediate, firm, and dismissive. It was the voice he used when he was explaining to a client why a project was late, or explaining to me why I didn't actually need new shoes for school. It was the voice of a man who decided what reality was. Gordon, she says it's from the IRS, my mother said, but her tone wasn't worried. It was prompting. I heard her, Gordon said. Listen to me. Stella, don't panic. It is probably identity theft. It happens all the time. Someone gets your number. They file a bad return. The system goes haywire. It is a computer error. I looked at the letter. The name was perfect. The address was my old address in Rochester. Forwarded here. It's not a bad return. Dad, I said. It's not a personal tax debt. The letter references a business entity. I had not told him that yet. The letter mentioned a business, but I had not read that part out loud. I had only said the amount. Well, exactly, Gordon said, the speed of his speech accelerating. That proves it is identity theft. Someone opened a business in your name. It is a mess, Stella, a total mess, but you do not need to worry about it. We see this with clients sometimes. You see clients with $200,000 debts in their children's names? I asked. I see errors, Gordon snapped. Look, do not do anything. Do not call them. If you call them without having the paperwork in front of you, you will just flag yourself for an audit. You don't know how these people work. I froze. The paperwork? I repeated. Yes, the paperwork, Gordon said. The filings, the notices. You don't have the context. Stella, if you call them and say the wrong thing, you admit liability. You need to let us handle it. I have the letter right here, I said slowly. I didn't say anything about filings. I didn't say anything about what kind of business it was. I am assuming, Gordon said. He was smooth. But I could hear the edge of irritation. The strain of a man trying to put a lid on a boiling pot. I am assuming because I am a professional. Stella, I know how the system works. Now, listen, Mom wants you to come home. Yes, Elaine chimed in, her voice sliding back into that sweet, cloying register. Stella, honey, you shouldn't be alone right now. $200,000? That is terrifying. You're probably shaking. Just get in the car. Come home tonight. We'll order pizza. Dad can look at the letter, and he can write a letter to the IRS for you tomorrow morning. We'll fix it. We'll fix it as a family. My stomach turned over. The image was so clear it made me nauseous. The drive to Rochester, the warm house, the pizza on the table, the comforting illusion of safety. It was a trap. It was the oldest trap in my life. Come home. Let us take care of it. Let us handle the scary world for you. And in exchange, you give us your autonomy. In exchange, you let us sign your name. You want me to bring the letter to you, I said. We want you to come home so you are not alone, Elaine said. You sound paranoid. Stella, I don't think I should come home, I said. Don't be ridiculous, Gordon said. His voice dropped an octave. It became the command voice. This is a legal matter. Stella, it is serious. You are named on a federal debt. If you try to handle this with your little degree and your stubbornness, you are going to end up in jail. Do you understand? They can arrest you. They can freeze your accounts. Come home. Tonight. The threat hung in the air. Jail. He was trying to scare me into compliance. He was banking on the fact that I was his daughter, the little girl who used to be afraid of thunder, the girl who trusted that her father knew how the world worked. But he made a mistake. He mentioned the accounts. I'm not coming home, I said. Stella, Elaine started. I'm not coming home, I repeated. And I'm not bringing you the letter. You are making a mistake, Gordon said. His voice was cold now. The mask of the helpful father had slipped, revealing the operator underneath. You are going to make a mess that I cannot clean up. I think the mess is already made, I said. I didn't wait for his response. I pressed the red button on my phone. The line went dead. The silence rushed back into the room, heavy and absolute. I sat there for a full minute, staring at the black screen of my phone. My heart was no longer racing. It had slowed to a heavy, rhythmic thud. The fear was still there, but it had changed. It was no longer the panic of the unknown. It was the fear of the known. They did it. They actually did it. They used me. I looked at the letter again. $247,000. Gordon had said paperwork before I mentioned the details. He knew. He didn't just know. He was waiting for this. He had a strategy ready. Don't call them. Don't flag yourself. Bring it to me. If I went home, the letter would disappear. He would file a response. He would forge my signature again. He would keep the game going for another 6 months, another year, while the interest compounded and the penalties grew. And I remained the human shield for their financial incompetence. I stood up. My legs felt steady. I walked to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a fresh legal pad and a black pen. I sat back down at the laptop. I was not going to Rochester. I was going to war. I wrote the date at the top of the page. Then I wrote the number 1. 1. IRS appointment. I needed to see a human being, not a phone agent who could be talked in circles, but a person in a federal building with a badge. I needed to look someone in the eye and say, I did not do this. I wrote number 2. 2. Transcript request. I needed to see everything. I needed to see every year, every filing, every piece of paper that had my social security number attached to it. I needed to know how deep the rot went. I wrote number 3. 3. Credit freeze. TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. I would lock them all down within the hour. If they tried to open a credit card to pay off the tax debt, they would hit a wall. I wrote number 4. 4. Proof of address. Gordon had mentioned identity theft. He would try to claim I lived there, or that I had authorized the mail to go there. I needed to prove where I was. I needed my lease. I needed my utility bills. I needed to prove that Stella Stewart lived in Milwaukee, worked in Milwaukee, and had absolutely nothing to do with Stewart Community Care LLC or whatever shell company they had spun up in Rochester. I looked at the list. It was short. It was practical. It was the only thing standing between me and ruin. I picked up the envelope again. I looked at the name. Stella Marie Stewart. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. Let's see who owns my name. I opened the laptop browser and typed 3 letters. IRS. The screen filled with white light, illuminating the kitchen, casting my shadow long and sharp against the wall behind me. I did not turn on the overhead light. I preferred to work in the dark. The appointment was at 8:15 in the morning at the Taxpayer Assistance Center on West Wisconsin Avenue. I arrived at 7:45. I stood outside the glass doors of the federal building, watching my reflection in the dark pane. I had spent 20 minutes that morning deciding what to wear. A calculation that felt absurd given the magnitude of the disaster, but I knew that in a bureaucracy, appearance is the first layer of defense. I needed to look solvent. I needed to look like a person who files on time, a person who keeps receipts, a person who does not panic. I chose black slacks, a white button-down shirt, and a gray blazer. No jewelry, no earrings. I tied my hair back in a tight, low bun. I did not want to give anyone a reason to describe me as frantic or disheveled. If I walked in there looking like a victim, they would treat me with pity. And pity does not clear a $247,000 debt. I needed them to treat me with professional respect. I checked my tote bag one last time, my driver's license, my actual Social Security card, my birth certificate, the last 3 years of my legitimate tax returns, printed on crisp paper, my current lease agreement, proving I lived in Milwaukee, my utility bills for the last 12 months, and in a separate plastic sleeve, the notice. I walked through the metal detector. The security guard was a heavy-set man who looked like he had been scanning bags for 1,000 years. He waved me through without looking at my face. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The waiting room was painted a color that could only be described as government beige. It was quiet, but it was a tense, vibrating quiet. There were 4 other people waiting. A man in a construction vest holding a crumpled letter, a woman rocking a stroller, staring at the ceiling. We did not look at each other. The IRS office is not a place for camaraderie. It is a place where people come when the system has found a flaw in their existence. I took a ticket from the machine. Number A14. I sat down and placed my bag on my lap. I did not look at my phone. I watched the digital board. At 8:12. The board flashed. A 14. Counter 3. I stood up, smoothed my blazer, and walked to the window. Agent Ramirez was younger than I expected. He looked to be in his late 30s, with a neatly trimmed beard and glasses that reflected the blue light of his dual monitors. He did not smile, but he did not scowl. He looked like a man who valued efficiency above all else. "Good morning," I said. My voice was steady. "I have an appointment regarding a notice I received." I slid my ID and the plastic sleeve containing the letter under the glass partition. Ramirez took the ID, glanced at it, glanced at me, and then typed something into his keyboard. Then he took the letter. He scanned the reference number at the top right corner. "Stella Stewart," he said, reading the screen. "Please verify your date of birth and social security number." I recited them. Ramirez nodded. He started typing. The sound of his keystrokes was loud in the quiet room. Click, clack, click, clack. Then he stopped, It was not a casual pause. It was a professional silence. It was the kind of silence that happens when the data on the screen does not match the person standing on the other side of the glass. He leaned forward slightly, squinting at the monitor. He scrolled down. He scrolled back up. He did not look at me. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, but I kept my hands folded on the counter. "Is there a problem?" I asked. Ramirez looked up. His expression had shifted from neutral to guarded. "Ms. Stewart," he said, "you booked this appointment to discuss a balance due of $247,000. Is that correct?" "That is what the letter says," I said. "I am here because that number is impossible. I work as a data analyst. My annual income is $82,000. I have one W-2 form. I have never owed the IRS more than a few $100s in my life." Ramirez looked back at the screen. "I see your personal filings here. You are correct. Your Form 1040 history is clean. You filed on time for 2022, 2023, and 2024. No outstanding balances on your personal income tax." "Then it is a mistake," I said, feeling a rush of relief. "It is an error." "It is not an error," Ramirez said. The relief evaporated instantly. "This notice is not for your personal income tax," Ramirez said, his voice lowering slightly, becoming more technical. "This balance is a trust fund recovery penalty. It is a civil penalty assessed against a responsible party for the willful failure to collect or pay over employment taxes." I stared at him. The words were English, but they didn't make sense together. "Employment taxes?" I asked. "I don't have employees. I don't have a business." Ramirez turned his monitor slightly. Not enough for me to see the whole thing, but enough to indicate he was looking at a different file now. "The system has you listed as a responsible party for a business entity that has failed to pay its payroll taxes for 4 consecutive quarters," he said. "When a business fails to pay the taxes withheld from employees, Social Security, Medicare, the IRS can look through the corporate veil and assess that debt personally to the officers of the company. That is what this letter is. We are not taxing your income. We are recovering the stolen trust funds from you personally." The room seemed to tilt. Stolen trust funds. "Officers of the company." "I am not an officer of any company," I said. "I am an analyst. I analyze marketing data. According to our records, you are," Ramirez said. "Do you want me to print the submission summary?" "Yes," I said. "Please." The printer behind him whirred. It was a slow, grinding sound. He reached back, grabbed a single sheet of paper, and slid it under the glass. I looked at it. The text was small, but the name in the center of the page seemed to be written in neon fire. Entity name, Stewart, Community Care, LLC. I felt the blood drain from my face. Stewart Community Care. It was the business my parents had started 10 years ago. It was a home health aid service. They managed nurses, coordinated visits for the elderly. I remembered when they started it. I remembered my father talking about how it was going to be their legacy. I remembered my mother designing the logo on a napkin. I had never worked there. I had never been on the payroll. I had never even stepped foot in their leased office space. I looked down the page. Responsible party. Stella Marie Stewart. Title, Treasurer. "Treasurer," I whispered. "The treasurer is typically the person with signature authority over the bank accounts," Ramirez said, watching my reaction closely. "The person who decides which bills get paid and which ones do not. In this case, the payroll checks were issued, but the taxes withheld from those checks were never sent to the IRS. I have never signed a check for this company," I said. I looked up at Ramirez. "I have never signed a document for this company. I didn't even know I was listed on the paperwork." Ramirez paused. He was assessing me. I could see him looking at my clothes, my calm demeanor, the folder of documents I had brought. He was trying to decide if I was a liar or a victim. The designation of treasurer usually requires a Form 8822B or an initial incorporation document filed with the state and the IRS, Ramirez said. And recently, there was an update. What kind of update? I asked. There is a packet attached to this case file, Ramirez said. He tapped a key. It looks like a response was submitted recently, a collection of documents to verify the status of the business. Can I see it? I can't give you the originals, Ramirez said. But since you are the listed responsible party, I can provide a transcript copy. He printed another stack of papers. This one was thicker. He slid it across. I flipped through the pages. There were bank statements. There were profit and loss sheets. And then, there was a document titled Statement of Financial Condition. It was dated 6 months ago. At the bottom of the page, there was a signature. Stella M. Stewart. I stared at it. It was my name. It was written in blue ink. It had the loops of my S and the sharp cross of my T. It looked like my signature. To a stranger, it was my signature, but it wasn't. I signed my name with a heavy pressure on the downstrokes. This signature was light, floating, confident but hurried. It was a performance of my signature. It was a forgery executed by someone who had seen my handwriting on birthday cards and permission slips for 30 years. That is not my signature, I said. Ramirez didn't blink. You are saying this is a forgery? I am saying I did not sign this, I said. I was in Milwaukee 6 months ago. I was at my job. I can prove I was in my office the day this was dated. I flipped the page. There was another form. Form 2848. Power of Attorney and Declaration of Representative. This form authorizes a third party to represent the taxpayer before the IRS, to negotiate, to set up payment plans, to receive confidential information. The representative listed was Martin Sloan, enrolled agent. I didn't know a Martin Sloan, but I knew the phone number listed under the taxpayer contact section. It was not my cell phone number. It was a landline, area code 262. It was my parents' house phone. They appointed a representative, I said, my voice cold. They appointed someone to talk to you for me. It appears so, Ramirez said. This form allows Mr. Sloan to receive copies of all notices. It also allows him to sign agreements on your behalf. Meaning, I said, realizing the full scope of the trap, that if you sent a warning letter 2 months ago, it didn't come to me, it went to him, and he told them, if the address was updated, yes, Ramirez said, and I see here that there is a pending request to change the mailing address for Stella Stewart to the business address in Rochester. I felt a wave of nausea, but I pushed it down. They were trying to reroute my mail. They were trying to steal my mailbox so I wouldn't see the train coming. Agent Ramirez, I said. I placed my hands flat on the counter. I want to go on the record right now. I am not the treasurer of Stewart Community Care. I did not sign these documents. I did not hire Martin Sloan, and I did not authorize a change of address. Ramirez looked at me for a long moment. Then he reached for a notepad. You are alleging identity theft, he said. But this is complex because it is familial. You are alleging that the officers of the company, your parents, presumably, used your information without your consent. I am not alleging, I said. I am reporting it. What do I need to do to stop this? Because if they have power of attorney, they can agree to a payment plan in my name. They can admit to this debt in my name. They could, Ramirez admitted, if the power of attorney is valid. It is not valid, I said. It is fraud, Ramirez nodded. He typed a quick command. I am placing a flag on the account, he said. It is a suspected identity theft marker. This will not stop the automated collection process overnight, but it pauses any immediate seizure actions while we investigate. It also requires that any person claiming to represent you must undergo higher scrutiny. He pulled out a blank form. Form 14039, Identity Theft Affidavit. You need to fill this out, he said, but because this is a business tax issue, it is stickier. You need to prove you didn't have control. You need to prove you didn't benefit from the money. I can prove that, I said. I can give you my bank statements. You will see no deposits from Stewart Community Care. 0. That is a good start, Ramirez said. But the signature is the problem. If they have a document with your signature, the burden of proof shifts to you to prove it is fake. I looked at the forged signature on the copy again. It was so close. It was terrifyingly close. I need copies of everything, I said. I need the entire packet, the statement, the power of attorney, the initial incorporation documents if you have them. I need to see every time they used my name. I can give you the transcript of the packet, Ramirez said. I cannot give you the source documents today because they are scanned in a central processing center, but I can print the submission record. Do it, I said. As the printer whirred again, a thought struck me. Agent Ramirez, I said, if this Martin Sloan has a power of attorney on file, does that mean he knows I'm here? Ramirez stopped typing. He looked at the screen. The system updates in real time, he said. If he has alerts set up on the account status, he might see that the account has been accessed at a taxpayer assistance center. He wouldn't know it's you specifically, but he would know there is activity. He would know the shield is moving, I said. Yes, Ramirez said. He would. He slid the stack of papers across the counter. This is the submission summary, he said. It shows the dates everything was filed. It shows the IP address of the electronic submission for the recent forms. I looked at the IP address. It meant nothing to me, just a string of numbers. But the date on the power of attorney was from last week, just 4 days before the letter hit my door. They knew the debt was coming due. They knew the IRS was about to drop the hammer, so they quickly, desperately, forged a legal shield using my name to buy themselves time. They threw me in front of the train to save the company. One more thing, I said, putting the papers into my folder. I want to revoke that power of attorney immediately. I don't want Martin Sloan speaking for me. I don't want him to have access to my tax records. I can process a revocation, Ramirez said. You need to write a statement right now. I, Stella Stewart, revoke all prior powers of attorney. Sign it. Date it. I will scan it into the file immediately. I grabbed the pen. I wrote the sentence in harsh, jagged letters. I signed it with my real signature. Heavy, deliberate, angry. I slid it back to him. Uploaded, Ramirez said after a moment. He is locked out of the file as of this minute. If he tries to call, we will tell him his authorization is invalid. Good, I said. Ms. Stewart, Ramirez said. His voice was softer now. This is going to be a long process. The trust fund recovery penalty is one of the most aggressive tools the IRS has. We treat it like theft because that money belonged to the employees. If you are the treasurer, you are the one who stole it. I am not the treasurer, I said, looking him in the eye. I am the witness. Ramirez nodded slowly. Then get your evidence together, because the system assumes the paperwork is true until you prove it is a lie. I stood up. I felt heavier than when I walked in, but also sharper. I knew the enemy now. It wasn't a faceless government agency. It was Stewart Community Care, LLC. It was a fake title. It was a forged signature. Thank you, Agent Ramirez, I said. I turned and walked toward the exit. I held the folder against my chest. I had the transcripts. I had the dates. I had the name of the man they hired to bury me. I walked out of the beige room and back to the elevator. The man in the construction vest was still staring at his crumpled letter. I wanted to tell him to fight. I wanted to tell him to check the signatures, but I didn't. I had my own war to fight. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, I looked at the timestamp on the summary sheet. 8:42 a.m. The game had officially changed. They thought I was at home, crying, waiting for my father to fix it. They didn't know I had just cut their puppet strings. Martin Sloan was about to get a very confusing notification, and my parents were about to realize that their treasurer had gone rogue. The printer behind Agent Ramirez stopped its rhythmic grinding, settling into a silence that felt heavier than the noise. He reached back, his movements slow and deliberate, and retrieved a fresh stack of warm paper. He did not slide them across the glass immediately. Instead, He separated the top sheet, held it up to the light for a fraction of a second, and then placed it squarely in the center of the counter between us. "This," Ramirez said, his voice stripped of any bureaucratic fatigue, "is the statement of liability accompanying the initial setup of the payment plan. It was submitted 3 months ago." I looked down. The document was standard government formatting, dense, intimidating, full of boxes and lines, but my eyes went straight to the bottom of the page. Drawn there by the magnetism of disaster, there was a signature line. Beneath it, typed in clear, uncompromising capital letters, was my name, Stella Marie Stewart, and above the line was the ink. I stared at it. The room seemed to contract, the beige walls pressing in until the only thing in the world was that blue scrawl. It was a good forgery. It was terrifyingly good. It wasn't the shaky, uncertain attempt of a stranger trying to copy a driver's license. It was the work of someone who had seen my handwriting on birthday cards, on report cards, on permission slips, and on thank you notes for 30 years. It captured the general slant of my letters. It captured the way I looped the top of the S, but it was wrong. It was wrong in a way that only I could see, and in a way that made my stomach turn over with a distinct, sharp nausea. The signature was too confident. It had a flourish at the end, a sharp upward strike on the final T that spoke of arrogance, of a person used to signing checks that cleared without question. I do not sign like that. My signature is compact. It is controlled. When I cross my T, I do it with a flat, horizontal line, a habit I picked up in architecture class in college and never lost. This signature didn't have the architect's line. It had the salesman's flair. It was my father's hand trying to wear my name like a costume. "It is close," I whispered, the realization tasting like copper in my mouth. "But it is rushed. Look at the spacing." I pointed a trembling finger at the glass, tapping the spot where the first name bled into the middle initial. "I lift my pen," I said, looking up at Ramirez. "I always lift my pen between the A and the M. Always. This is one continuous motion. The person who signed this was in a hurry to get to the next page." Ramirez leaned in, his eyes narrowing behind his glasses. He was not looking at the signature as art. He was looking at it as evidence. "A continuous stroke suggests muscle memory," Ramirez said softly. "Or it suggests someone who was signing a stack of documents all at once and got into a rhythm. He was signing my life away," I said, and he didn't even pause to take a breath. Ramirez turned the page. "There is more," he said. The next document was the Form 2848, the Power of Attorney and Declaration of Representative. This was the legal instrument that handed my voice over to a stranger. I scanned the boxes. Taxpayer name, Stella Stewart. Address, 402 Maple Avenue, Rochester, Wisconsin. My parents' house. My eyes moved to the section for the authorized representative, Martin Sloan, enrolled agent, and then I saw the contact number. It was listed under taxpayer daytime telephone number, 262-555-0198. I felt a cold chill run down my spine, colder than the air conditioning in the building could account for. That number was etched into the deepest, oldest parts of my brain. That was the number I was taught to memorize in kindergarten in case I got lost. That was the number I called when I missed the bus in high school. That was the number of the landline that sat on the oak desk in my father's study, the phone he used to charm investors and berate contractors. They had listed their own home phone as my direct line. "That number," I said, my voice shaking with a sudden, violent anger. "That is not me. That is the landline in the house where they live. If the IRS called that number to verify anything, who would pick up?" Ramirez looked at the form, then back at me. The implications were settling on him, layer by layer. "If we called that number," Ramirez said, "we would speak to whoever answered, and if they identified themselves as the taxpayer, if they said they were Stella Stewart, we would have no way of knowing otherwise, provided they could verify the Social Security number." "My mother," I said. "She answers that phone. She sounds just like me on the phone. People mistake us all the time." The trap was so complete it was suffocating. They hadn't just stolen my credit. They had stolen my identity in the most literal sense. They could answer calls as me. They could receive mail as me. They had built a Stella Stewart simulacrum in Rochester, a puppet that nodded and agreed to debts while the real Stella Stewart in Milwaukee worked and slept. Completely unaware, Ramirez flipped to the third page in the packet. "This is the one that concerns me the most regarding the timeline," he said. It was Form 8822, change of address. It was dated 2 weeks ago. The old address box listed my actual apartment in Milwaukee, the one where I had received the terrifying notice yesterday. The new address box listed the Rochester house. "Do you see the date?" Ramirez asked, tapping the paper. "October 2nd. "That was 12 days ago," I said. "The system takes about 10 to 14 days to fully process a change of address across all databases," Ramirez said. "The notice you received yesterday, the one that brought you here, was generated by an automated batch process on October 4th. It went to your Milwaukee address because the change request hadn't fully propagated through the system yet." He looked at me with a grave intensity. "Ms. Stewart, you got that letter by accident. It was a timing error in their favor that failed. If the system had been 3 days faster, that notice would have gone to Rochester. You would never have seen it. Your parents would have opened it, panicked, handed it to this Martin Sloan, and he would have handled it without you ever knowing." I gripped the edge of the counter. The room swayed. "They were trying to bury it," I said. "They knew the big bill was coming. They knew the $247,000 hammer was about to drop. So they tried to reroute the mail to make sure I stayed blind." "Interception," Ramirez said. "It is a classic move in fraud cases, but usually it is a stranger diverting mail to a P.O. box, to have family divert mail to their own home." He trailed off. He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't have to. The cruelty of it hung in the air between us. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a sharp, aggressive vibration against my hip. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. I pulled it out. The screen lit up with a notification. Message from Dad. I stared at the preview. My hands were trembling, but not from fear anymore. They were trembling from the adrenaline of the hunt. I unlocked the phone and opened the message. "Gordon Stewart. Just checking in. Mom is worried. Don't do anything rash. We can sort this out at dinner. Don't talk to anyone until we look at the paperwork together. It's complicated." Then, a second message, immediately following the first. "Gordon Stewart. And don't answer if unknown numbers call. Scammers are everywhere." I let out a short, harsh laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "Scammers are everywhere," I repeated. I turned the phone around and pressed it against the glass partition, right in front of Ramirez's face. "Read this," I said. "Read what the scammer just sent me." Ramirez adjusted his glasses. He leaned forward. He read the messages. He read them twice. He pulled back, and for the first time, his professional mask cracked completely. His eyebrows drew together in a dark line. "He is telling you not to answer unknown numbers," Ramirez observed. "Likely because he is afraid one of those numbers might be a compliance officer calling to verify the assets." "He is telling me not to talk to anyone," I said. "He says it is complicated. That is his code word for illegal." Ramirez reached for his keyboard. He began typing rapidly, his fingers flying across the keys with a new urgency. "I am adding a note to the case file," he said. "Taxpayer provided real-time evidence of potential coercion. The suspected perpetrator is advising the victim to avoid contact with federal authorities. Make sure you write down that he called it complicated," I said. "I want that on the record." "It is on the record," Ramirez said. He hit enter with a solid, definitive clack. He looked up at me. "Ms. Stewart, because you are physically here, and because the signature on the power of attorney is disputed, I am going to initiate a lock on this account. We call it a collection hold, pending investigation." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means the machine stops," Ramirez said. "It means we stop the automated levy process. We stop the letters. We stop the clock on the seizure of your wages or your bank accounts. It buys you time. It freezes the debt in place while the Identity Theft Victim Assistance Organization looks at the files. Do it, I said. However, Ramirez continued, pulling out a new form, a single sheet of paper with a bold black border. To make this stick, I need a sample. Right now, I need to see your real signature, wet ink, on a federal document, witnessing that you are who you say you are. He slid the paper under the glass. Form 8822, change of address. I need you to fill this out, he said. Use your current Milwaukee address. This will override the pending request to change it to Rochester. It effectively kills their attempt to divert your mail, and at the bottom, I want you to sign it. I took the pen. It was a cheap, government-issue ballpoint, but it felt like a weapon in my hand. I filled out the top section. Stella Marie Stewart, 115 Lakeview Drive, Apartment 3B, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I pressed hard. I wanted the carbon copy to feel it. Then I got to the signature line. I took a breath. I thought about the confident, arrogant scrawl on the forged document, the signature of a man who thought he owned me, the signature of a man who thought his daughter was just another asset in his portfolio, something to be leveraged and liquidated when the cash flow got tight. I put the pen to the paper. I wrote my name. I wrote it with the pauses. Stella, lift, M, lift, Stewart. I crossed the T with a flat, level line. Sharp, precise, unwavering. It looked nothing like the signature on the statement of liability. They were two different people. One was a fiction created by a desperate debtor. The other was a woman who was done being a victim. I slid the paper back to Ramirez. He took it. He placed it directly next to the printout of the forged statement. He looked at the left. He looked at the right. The contrast was stark. It was undeniable. Okay, Ramirez said quietly. I see it. You see it? I asked. I see two different authors, he said. And I see intent. He picked up a stamp, a heavy self-inking dater. He positioned it over my fresh signature and pressed down. Received, October 16th, 2026, IRS Field Office, Milwaukee. The sound of the stamp hitting the paper was loud, like a gavel coming down. Your address is locked, Ramirez said. Any mail goes to you. Only you. If they try to change it back, it will trigger a fraud alert immediately. Thank you, I said. Do not thank me yet, Ramirez warned. This is just the firewall. The fire is still burning. You have a $247,000 debt attached to your Social Security number, and now you have practically declared war on the people who put it there. I didn't declare war, I said, looking at the two signatures side by side, the lie and the truth. I just showed up to the battlefield. Ramirez handed me a copy of the stamped form. Keep this, he said. Keep it with you at all times. If anyone comes to your door, if anyone tries to tow your car, you show them this. It proves you are in an active dispute. I took the paper. It was still warm from the copier. What happens to Martin Sloan? I asked. Ramirez looked at the screen where he had revoked the authorization. Mr. Sloan is about to have a very bad morning, Ramirez said. When I flagged this account for identity theft, his access token was revoked. The next time he tries to log in to check on his client, he is going to get a red screen telling him to contact the Criminal Investigation Division if he believes there is an error. A grim satisfaction settled in my chest. He will call my father, I said, within minutes. Yes, Ramirez said. He will? Good, I said. I gathered my papers. The folder was thicker now. It held the proof of the crime. It held the timeline of the betrayal. And now, it held the shield that would keep them from burying me in the dark. One last thing. Agent Ramirez, I said as I stood up. Yes? When the investigation starts, will they be notified? Will my parents know I was the one who flagged it? Ramirez looked at me over the rim of his glasses. The IRS does not protect the identity of the whistleblower when the whistleblower is the victim, he said. But in this case, you are not just the victim. You are the responsible party until proven otherwise. We aren't telling them you reported them. We are telling them that the treasurer has reclaimed control of the account." He paused, then added, "They will know it was you, because no one else could have signed that form." "That is exactly what I wanted to hear," I said. I slipped my phone back into my pocket without looking. I didn't want noise. I wanted record. The air in the cubicle tightened as Ramirez stared at the signatures again. Like his eyes were trying to decide whether this was paperwork or a crime scene. I had the records. I had the freeze. And I had the absolute, terrifying certainty that the people who raised me had sold me for $247,000. Now, it was time to close the rest of the doors they had left open. Agent Ramirez stopped typing. He took his hands off the keyboard and let them hover there for a second. Staring at the side-by-side signatures on his desk, the silence in the cubicle had shifted. It was no longer the productive silence of a bureaucrat solving a problem. It was the heavy, loaded silence of a man who realized he was looking at a crime scene rather than a clerical error. "I need to bring in a supervisor," Ramirez said. He did not look at me. He picked up his desk phone and dialed a 4-digit extension. "Sir, I have a code 390 in cubicle 4. Familial, disputed authorization. Yes, it involves a trust fund recovery penalty. I think you need to see the address history. Thank you." He hung up. "Who is coming?" I asked. "Lead Officer Benton," Ramirez said. "He manages the complex fraud cases for this district." 2 minutes later, a man appeared at the entrance of the cubicle. Lead Officer Benton was a tall man with graying hair cut militarily short and a face that seemed carved out of granite. He did not look like someone who made small talk. He looked like someone who enforced statutes. When he stepped into the small space, the air seemed to leave it. The background noise of the other appointments, the crying baby, the murmuring voices, faded into a dull buzz. "Agent Ramirez," Benton said. His voice was low, calm, and terrifyingly level. "Brief me." Ramirez handed him the folder. He pointed to the forged signature. He pointed to my fresh signature. He pointed to the metadata on the screen showing the IP address. "The taxpayer is physically present," Ramirez said. "She alleges she had no knowledge of the business entity Stewart Community Care, LLC. She alleges she did not sign the statement of financial condition. She alleges she did not authorize the power of attorney for Martin Sloan. And she just provided a wet signature to lock her address, which conflicts with a pending change request to the business address." Benton listened without blinking. He picked up the 2 papers, the lie and the truth, and held them up to the fluorescent light, just as Ramirez had done. He studied them for a long 10 seconds. Then he looked at me. His eyes were a pale, piercing blue. "Ms. Stewart," Benton said, "I am going to ask you some questions. I need you to answer them with absolute precision. Do not guess. If you do not know, say you do not know." "I understand," I said. Benton sat down in the empty chair next to Ramirez. He pulled the keyboard toward him. "Ramirez, pull up the transcript history for the individual taxpayer, not the business, the individual. Go back 10 years. Ramirez typed. The screen flashed. A long list of data points scrolled down. Benton leaned in, his finger tracing the lines on the monitor. "Here," Benton said, tapping the glass. "And here, and here." He turned the monitor so I could see it. "Ms. Stewart, look at this address history," Benton said. "According to our records, your mailing address has changed 8 times in the last 12 years. That is not unusual for a young professional, but look at the pattern." I looked. 2014, changed to Rochester, Wisconsin. 2015, changed to Madison, Wisconsin. 2016, changed to Rochester, Wisconsin. 2018, changed to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 2019, changed to Rochester, Wisconsin. "Every time you moved," Benton said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Your address was updated to your parents' house in Rochester within 6 months. Then, a year later, it would be updated back to your rental. Then back to Rochester. It is a cycle." I stared at the screen. I saw the dates. 2014. That was my sophomore year of college. 2019. That was when I started my first real job. I didn't file those changes, I said. The realization was cold and sharp. I just thought some mail went there because it was my permanent address on my old license. I didn't know someone was filing forms. Someone was managing your mail flow, Benton corrected. This suggests that for the last decade, someone has been systematically ensuring that they have a window into your financial correspondence. They pull the address back to them, check for anything important, and then release it back to you. Or they keep it. A memory hit me so hard I almost gasped. I was 19. I was standing in the kitchen in Rochester. I was packing to go back to the dorms. My father, Gordon, was standing by the counter, holding a manila envelope. "You're going to lose these in a dorm room, Stella," he had said. His voice was reasonable, protective. "Passports, social security cards, birth certificates. Kids get robbed all the time. Leave them in the safe here. I'll keep the files. I'll handle the paperwork so you can focus on your grades." I had handed them over. I had thanked him. I had felt safe. "My father," I said to Benton. "When I was 19, he told me he would keep my important documents for safety. He has my social security card. He has my birth certificate. He has everything." Benton nodded. It was a nod that said he had heard this story 1,000 times. "That explains the access," Benton said. "He has the raw data to pass any security verification we have over the phone. If he has your SSN and your prior year's tax return, which he would have if the mail went to him, he is effectively you in the eyes of the system." He turned back to Ramirez. "Lock the mail," Benton ordered. "Hard freeze, level 2 verification required for any future address changes. Meaning she has to walk into a federal building with biometric ID to move her mail again. No online requests, no paper forms." "Doing it now," Ramirez said. "Now," Benton said, looking at the business file again. "Let's look at the immediate threat, the trust fund recovery penalty. You said there was a packet submitted?" "Yes, sir," Ramirez said. "Martin Sloan submitted a package regarding the unpaid payroll taxes." Benton started clicking through the recent activity log. He stopped. His jaw tightened. "Ramirez," Benton said, "did you see the hold request?" "The what?" Ramirez asked. "There is a hold request on the account," Benton said. "It was logged yesterday afternoon, at 4:30 p.m. I looked at the clock on the wall. Yesterday at 4:30 p.m. was exactly when I was standing in my kitchen. Opening the envelope, it was exactly when I called my mother." "What is a hold request?" I asked. Benton turned to me. His expression was grave. "A hold request is asked for by a representative to pause proceedings due to extenuating circumstances," Benton explained. "Mr. Sloan filed a request to delay any direct contact with the taxpayer, with you, for 30 days. Why?" I asked. "The reason code listed is client distress." Benton read from the screen. The notes say, "Taxpayer is currently experiencing a mental health episode and is confused regarding business obligations. All communication must go through the representative to avoid exacerbating the condition." The room spun. I felt a physical blow to my chest. They hadn't just stolen my money. They hadn't just forged my name. They had preemptively struck at my credibility. They knew I would get the letter. They knew I might react. So they told the federal government, in an official record, that I was unstable, that I was having an episode, that I was confused. If I had called the IRS hotline yesterday, screaming and crying, the agent on the other end would have seen that note. They would have thought, "Ah, here is the distressed client the representative warned us about." They would have soothed me, ignored me, and directed me back to Martin Sloan. "They tried to gaslight the IRS," I whispered. "They tried to isolate you," Benton said. "They wanted to make sure that if you tried to speak, no one would listen. They wanted to contain the blast radius." My father's text message from 20 minutes ago flashed in my mind. "Don't talk to anyone. It's complicated." He wasn't protecting me from scammers. He was protecting his narrative. He was protecting the lie that I was the incompetent, unstable daughter who needed her daddy to fix her mess. "I am not distressed," I said. My voice was shaking, but it was the shaking of rage, not weakness. "I am not having an episode. I am a data analyst at a Fortune 500 company. I am sane. And I am being framed." Benton looked at me. He studied my face, my posture, the way I was holding my folder. "I can see that," Benton said. "But the system records what is inputted. Until 5 minutes ago, the system believed you were a liability. Now, we are going to correct the record." He turned to Ramirez. "We are opening an identity misuse case attached to the business master file," Benton said. "But I need more than just the signature discrepancy. I need the origin." He looked at me. "Ms. Stewart, I need you to answer this on the record. I am Supervisor Benton, badge number 8944. Do you, Stella Marie Stewart, authorize Gordon Stewart, Elaine Stewart, or Martin Sloan to act on your behalf regarding any tax matters?" "No," I said. "I do not." "Did you authorize them in the past?" "No." "Did you agree to serve as treasurer for Stewart Community Care, LLC?" "No." "Did you receive any compensation, salary, or dividends from this company?" "No." "Not a cent." "Okay," Benton said. "Ramirez, get the scan source." "The source?" Ramirez asked. "The packet that Sloan submitted," Benton said. "The digital images are in the repository. I want to see the raw scan. I want to see the edges of the paper. I want to see the fax header." Ramirez navigated to a different database. He pulled up the image file of the packet that contained the forged documents. He zoomed in. "There," Benton said. "Look at the top margin." There was a faint line of text, generated by the fax machine that had sent the documents to Martin Sloan's office before he uploaded them to the IRS portal. "Sent from Stewart Home Office, date October 10th, 2026. "It came from their house," I said. "We knew that," Benton said. "But look at the cover sheet." Ramirez scrolled to the first page of the scan. It was a handwritten cover sheet, scrawled in thick, black marker. It was a note from the sender to the recipient, from my father to Martin Sloan. I looked at the screen. The handwriting was aggressive. The letters were blocky, leaning forward, written with a heavy hand that indented the paper. I knew that handwriting. I had seen it on chore lists. I had seen it on angry notes left on the kitchen counter when I forgot to turn off the porch light. It read, "Martin, here are the signed forms. Urgent. Add responsible officer immediately so we can release the hold on the business accounts. She is on board. Just get it filed. Gordon." "She is on board," I read aloud. "He lied to his own accountant," Benton said. "He told Sloan you were on board. That makes Sloan a pawn. Potentially, or a co-conspirator, if he didn't verify. But this note?" Benton tapped the screen. "This note proves Gordon Stewart was the originator of the directive. He instructed the addition of the responsible officer. He claimed you consented. And he did it for a specific reason. So we can release the hold on the business accounts." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means the IRS had likely frozen the company's bank accounts because of the unpaid tax," Benton explained. "To get the freeze lifted, they needed to give us a body. They needed to give us someone to blame, someone to pursue. Once they named a responsible party, you, and set up a payment plan in your name, the system would release the grip on the company's operating cash." I felt sick. It was a trade. They traded me for cash flow. They threw me to the wolves so they could keep their business running for another few months. "He sold me," I said. "He sold my future for a temporary unfreeze." "It appears so," Benton said. "And the urgent, underlined twice? That shows intent. He wasn't confused. He was desperate, and desperate people leave trails." Benton stood up. The room seemed to expand again, the pressure shifting from me to the man in the screen, the man who had written that note. "Ramirez," Benton said, "print that cover sheet. Attach it to the affidavit, Ms. Stewart is going to sign. This is no longer just a civil dispute about a signature match. This is evidence of willful, unauthorized disclosure and potentially wire fraud. He looked at me. Ms. Stewart, we are moving this to the criminal investigation referral queue. It does not mean they will be charged tomorrow. These things take time. But as of this moment, the IRS is no longer looking at you as the debtor. We are looking at you as the witness. What about the client distress hold? I asked. The note that says I'm crazy? I am overriding it, Benton said. I am entering a new case note. Taxpayer appeared in person, lucid, cooperative, and provided evidence of unauthorized representation. Previous hold request identified as an obstruction tactic. He looked at me with a grim sort of respect. You did the right thing coming here, Ms. Stewart. Most people would have called, if you had called. That distress note would have blocked you. By walking through that door, you bypassed their firewall. I looked at the cover sheet on the screen one last time. She is on board. I want a copy of that, I said. I want a copy of the note where he says I agreed to this. You can have it, Benton said. It is part of your file now. Ramirez printed the page. The whirring sound was the only noise in the room. I took the paper. I looked at my father's handwriting. It didn't look like authority anymore. It looked like evidence. Thank you, Officer Benton, I said. Don't go home. Ms. Stewart, Benton said, his voice dropping to a warning tone. If they know you are here, and they will, once Sloan sees his access revoked, they will try to contact you. Do not engage. Do not let them talk you into withdrawing this affidavit. Once you walk out of here, if you change your story, you become a co-conspirator. Do you understand? I understand, I said. I am not changing my story. Good, Benton said. He turned and walked out of the cubicle, as abruptly as he had arrived. Taking the air of command with him, I was left with Ramirez. He looked shaken. I have never seen Benton refer a family case that fast, Ramirez said quietly. Usually he wants more review. The client distress note. That really upset him. The IRS hates being used as a tool for manipulation. So do I said. I put the cover sheet in my folder. Right next to the revocation of power of attorney. My collection was growing. I had the forgery. I had the motive. And now, I had the written instruction. I checked my phone. No new messages. But I knew they were coming. The silence was the eye of the storm. Martin Sloan was probably staring at a access denied screen right now, reaching for his phone to call the number he had listed for Stella Stewart. The number that rang in my parents' kitchen. And when my mother answered, and he told her the IRS had locked him out because the client revoked his access, the explosion would be nuclear. I'm ready to sign the affidavit, I told Ramirez. Let's make this official. The air in the cubicle had just begun to settle when the phone on Agent Ramirez's desk rang again. It was a sharp, jagged sound that cut through the low hum of the office. Ramirez picked it up, listened for a moment, and his eyes flicked immediately to Supervisor Benton. Understood, Ramirez said into the receiver. Hold him there. Do not let him pass the barrier. He hung up. The look on his face was tight. Security at the front desk, Ramirez said to Benton. There is a man in the lobby asking for Stella Stewart. He knows she's in the building. He is demanding to see her. Who is it? Benton asked, his voice dropping to that dangerous, calm register. He identified himself as Martin Sloan, Ramirez said. He says he is her legal tax representative and that we are holding his client against her will. I felt a jolt of adrenaline, but it wasn't fear. It was the shock of proximity. Martin Sloan, the man whose name was on the paperwork, the man who had called me distressed and confused in the official file, was downstairs. He had arrived with impossible speed. He must have been close, I said. He must have been waiting for the alert. The system revoked his access 12 minutes ago, Benton said, checking his watch. He saw the red flag, saw the location code of the office where the lock was placed, and he came straight here. He is trying to intercept you before you put too much on the record. Benton stood up. He looked at me. Ms. Stewart, You do not have to see him. I can have security escort him out. I can tell him you are unavailable. You can leave through the employee exit in the back." I looked at the empty chair where Benton had been sitting. I looked at the folder in my hands, heavy with the evidence of my parents' betrayal. If I left now, if I snuck out the back door, I was playing their game. I would be the scared daughter running away. "No," I said. Benton paused. "No? I don't want to leave," I said, "and I don't want you to send him away. If he is here claiming to represent me, I want to face him. I want him to say it to my face, in front of you, in front of a camera. I want it on the record." Benton studied me for a long moment. A flicker of approval crossed his granite face. "If we do this," Benton said, "we do it formally, no hallway conversations. We take him into an interview room. We record it. Once that door closes, it is an official interview regarding a fraud allegation. Are you ready for that?" "I am ready," I said. "Ramirez," Benton barked. "Book interview room C, set up the video, go down to the lobby and escort Mr. Sloan up. Do not tell him what Miss Stewart has said. Just tell him his client is present." Ramirez nodded and hurried out. Benton led me down a different corridor. The walls here were stark white, stripping away even the pretense of comfort that the beige waiting room had offered. We entered a small room with a gray table, 4 chairs, and a camera mounted in the corner. "Sit here," Benton instructed, pointing to the chair facing the door. "Let him see you first." I sat down. I placed my hands on the table. They were steady. I folded them on top of the cease and desist revocation form I had just signed. 3 minutes later, the door opened. Martin Sloan walked in. He looked exactly like I expected, and yet nothing like I expected. I had pictured a shadowy villain. Instead, he was a man in his late 50s, wearing a suit that was expensive but ill-fitting, slightly tight around the shoulders. He had a flushed face and the harried, impatient energy of a man who is used to fixing problems by talking over them. He was carrying a leather briefcase that looked heavy. He saw me and stopped. His eyes scanned me. My rigid posture, my lack of tears, the calm way I was watching him. He faltered for a fraction of a second, expecting the distressed girl he had described in his notes. "Stella," he said, exhaling a breath he must have been holding. He put on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank God. Your father called me in a panic. He said you were confused. I came as soon as I could to help you sort this out." He moved to sit down, but Benton stepped into his line of sight. "Mr. Sloan," Benton said, "I am Supervisor Benton. Before you sit, I need to verify your status. You are claiming to represent this taxpayer?" "I am her enrolled agent," Sloan said. Sounding affronted, he tapped his briefcase. "I have the power of attorney right here. I don't know why my access was revoked this morning, but I assume it's a glitch in your new system." "Sit down," Benton said. Sloan sat. He looked at me again, his smile straining. "Stella," he said, dropping his voice to a conspiratorial whisper, "you shouldn't have come here alone. These people, they are aggressive. They don't understand the nuance of family businesses. If you say the wrong thing, you create liability. Let me handle the talking, okay? Just like your dad and I discussed." I looked at him. I didn't blink. "I didn't hire you, Mr. Sloan," I said. The room went dead silent. The hum of the air conditioning seemed to vanish. Sloan's smile froze. He chuckled nervously. "What? Of course you did. The paperwork—" "I want everything on the record," I said, interrupting him. I nodded toward the camera in the corner, where a small red light was now blinking. "Everything you say right now is being recorded, Mr. Sloan, so I will say it again. I did not hire you. I have never met you. I have never spoken to you on the phone, and I certainly didn't pay you." Sloan turned to look at Benton, then back at me. He was beginning to realize that the room was not a sanctuary. It was a trap. "I have a signed power of attorney," Sloan said, his voice hardening. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. He slapped it onto the metal table. "Right there," signed by Stella Stewart, dated October 10th. I didn't look at it. I looked at him. That is not my signature, I said. It is your name, Sloan snapped. Look, I understand you are under a lot of pressure. The tax debt is significant. Your father told me you might react poorly to the stress, but denying the legal authorization isn't going to help us get the penalty abated. Benton leaned forward. He placed his elbows on the table. Mr. Sloan, Benton said, you just stated that you have a signed power of attorney. Did you witness Ms. Stewart sign this document? Sloan hesitated. His eyes darted to the camera. The documents were provided to my office. Sloan said carefully. Provided by whom? Benton asked. By the family, Sloan said. By the business. It's a family entity. The parents are the majority members. The daughter is the treasurer. It is common practice for one officer to handle the administrative compilation. That is not what I asked, Benton said. Did you see her sign it? No, Sloan admitted. But that is not required for... Did you speak to her? Benton cut in. Before you filed this form with the IRS, did you ever, at any point, have a verbal conversation with Stella Stewart to confirm she knew she was being named as a representative? Sloan shifted in his seat. He was sweating now. I could see a bead of moisture forming at his hairline. I spoke with her father, Sloan said. Gordon Stewart. He is the primary contact for the business. He assured me that he had discussed the strategy with Stella and that she was fully on board. He brought the papers to my office himself. He brought them to you, I repeated. Yes, Sloan said, looking at me with a mix of frustration and pleading. Stella, your dad was trying to protect the company, and by extension, protect you. He said you agreed to take the title to help with the restructuring. He lied, I said. Well, that's between you and him, Sloan said, trying to deflect. But as far as I'm concerned, I was acting in good faith based on the documents presented by a senior partner of the firm. Benton pulled a piece of paper from his own file. It was the transcript of the hold request Sloan had filed yesterday. Mr. Sloan, Benton said, yesterday, at 4:30 p.m., you filed a request to place a hold on this account. You listed the reason as client distress. You wrote that the taxpayer was experiencing a mental health episode. Did you make a clinical diagnosis? Sloan flushed a deep, angry red. I was relaying information provided by the family. Gordon called me. He said Stella had received the notice and was hysterical. He said she was not in a state to speak to authorities. I was trying to buy time to calm her down. So you filed a false statement, Benton said. It wasn't a question. You stated as fact that the client was mentally incapacitated based solely on the word of a third party, the very third party who stands to benefit if she takes the fall for this debt. I was trying to stabilize the situation, Sloan burst out. He slammed his hand on the table. Do you know what happens if you people seize the operating accounts? The business dies. 30 employees lose their jobs. Gordon was desperate. He said, Help me keep the doors open, he said. Stella will understand. She just needs time. I don't understand, I said. Sloan looked at me. The condescension was gone. In its place was fear. He realized he had just admitted to procedural malpractice on a federal recording. Stella, he said, his voice trembling, if you revoke this, if you say you didn't sign it, do you know what happens? They go after your father. They go after Elaine. This isn't just a fine. This is criminal fraud. I know, I said. He's your father, Sloan whispered. He paid my retainer. He paid the filing fees. He did this to save the legacy. He paid you, Benton interrupted, seizing on the detail. Gordon Stewart paid your fees? Yes, Sloan said, defeated. From the company account? So, Benton said, summarizing for the tape, Gordon Stewart paid you. Gordon Stewart brought you the documents. Gordon Stewart told you what to write in the hold request, and you never once verified any of this with the woman sitting across from you, the woman whose financial life you were dismantling. Sloan slumped in his chair. It was a standard family representation. I didn't think. You didn't think she would show up, Benton finished. Benton reached across the table and took the power of attorney document that Sloan had laid down. He slid it over to me. Ms. Stewart, Benton said, for the final time, on the record, is this your signature? I looked at it. The fake Stella, with the arrogant flourish. The lie that had cost me my sleep and my safety. No, I said clearly. That is a forgery. Benton turned to the camera. Interview concluded at 9:15 a.m. He stood up and looked at Sloan. Mr. Sloan, your authorization is formally voided. You are no longer the representative for this taxpayer. Furthermore, I am flagging your enrolled agent status for review by the Office of Professional Responsibility. You accepted a power of attorney without due diligence and filed false statements regarding a taxpayer's health to obstruct collection. Sloan stood up, grabbing his briefcase. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely close the latch. You're making a mistake, he said to me. You're destroying your family. My family destroyed me first, I said. They just used you to file the paperwork. Sloan looked at me one last time, a look of pity mixed with resentment, and then hurried out the door, the heavy door clicking shut behind him. The silence returned to the room. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since I was 19 years old. He gave us everything, Benton said quietly. He admitted Gordon brought the files. He admitted Gordon paid him. He admitted he never spoke to you. That breaks the chain of implied consent. It proves the conspiracy. He looked so scared, I said. Not of the law. He looks scared of what happens when the house of cards falls. The house is already falling, Benton said. We just kicked out the last support beam. He picked up the tape recorder and stopped the recording. Ms. Stewart, you are done here for today. We have enough to open the criminal referral. Go home. Lock your doors. Do not answer your phone. What will Sloan do now? I asked. He will go to his car, Benton said. He will call Gordon Stewart, and he will tell him that the distressed daughter just walked into an IRS interrogation room and put them all in prison. I stood up. I felt lightheaded, but strong. Let him call, I said. I want my father to know. I want him to know it wasn't a computer error. It wasn't a mistake. It was me. Benton nodded. He opened the door for me. Walk out with your head up, Ms. Stewart. You aren't the defendant anymore. I walked out of the interview room, down the white corridor, and back into the lobby. I didn't hide. I walked straight past the security desk, out the glass doors, and into the sunlight. I checked my phone. It was blank. The calm before the explosion. Sloan was probably dialing right now. I could imagine the scene in Rochester. My mother in the kitchen, my father in his study, the phone ringing with the news that Stella Stewart had finally, officially, stopped being their daughter and started being their downfall. The door to the interview room did not slam shut, but the magnetic lock engaged with a final, heavy thud that sealed the air inside. The atmosphere was no longer just tense. It was sterile. It was the vacuum where careers and lies went to die. Supervisor Benton did not sit back down. He stood at the head of the metal table, looking down at Martin Sloan. Sloan was still clutching the handle of his briefcase, his knuckles white, his face a map of rapid, desperate calculations. He had played the card of the benevolent expert, the man here to save the hysterical girl. But the card had been declined. Mr. Sloan, Benton said. His voice was not loud, but it filled the small, soundproofed room completely. Effective immediately, the power of attorney on file for Stella Marie Stewart is designated as disputed. Your authorization to receive confidential tax information, to negotiate payment plans, or to sign any document on behalf of this taxpayer is terminated. Sloan blinked rapidly. He tried to regain his footing, shifting from the role of the caught thief back to the role of the concerned professional. You are making a procedural error, Sloan said, his voice tight. I understand the client is upset. I understand there is family friction. But if you cut me out, You cut out the only line of communication that is keeping the enforcement division from seizing her assets. If I don't coordinate the compliance today, the automated levy hits tomorrow." He turned to me, his eyes pleading. "Stella, listen to me. This isn't a game. Without a representative to hold the door open, the computer system will crush you. You need me to file the non-collectible status. You can't navigate this alone." I looked at him. I saw the manipulation for what it was. He was selling me the poison and claiming he was the only one with the antidote. "I am not alone," I said. "I am sitting with the lead officer of the fraud division." Benton stepped between us, cutting off Sloane's line of sight to me. "Mr. Sloane," Benton said, his tone sharpening into a blade, "do not threaten the taxpayer with our own statutes. We know the dispute window. We know the collection due process. And we know that when an identity theft affidavit is filed, the collection holds are automatic. You are not holding the door open. You are the one trying to lock her inside. I am trying to facilitate," Sloane started. "You are obstructing," Benton interrupted. "You are using the threat of a levy to coerce a signature from a victim who has stated, on camera, that she never hired you." The door opened behind us. It was Agent Ramirez. He walked in with a single sheet of paper held by the corner, as if it were contaminated evidence. He did not look at Sloane. He walked straight to Benton and handed him the sheet. "The source trace came back," Ramirez said. "We pulled the transmission metadata from the packet submission." Benton took the paper. He looked at it. He nodded, a grim satisfaction settling on his face. He placed the paper on the table, face up, right in front of Martin Sloane. "This is the transmission log for the power of attorney you claim Ms. Stewart signed," Benton said. I leaned forward to look. The log showed a series of numbers and codes, but highlighted in yellow was the originating station identification. It was a digital fingerprint left by the machine that scanned and sent the document. Station YD, SCC-AM, OFC, line 262-555-0198. SCC, Benton read. Stewart Community Care, main office, and the phone line matches the number listed for the taxpayer. Benton tapped the paper with his index finger. "This document was not scanned in your office. Mr. Sloane, it was not scanned at a library. It was not mailed to you. It was faxed directly to your server from the private office of Gordon Stewart at 8:30 in the morning on October 10th. Sloane stared at the log. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The metadata shows that the file was created, scanned, and transmitted from the business entity that owes the debt. Benton continued. It went straight from the debtor to you. The victim was nowhere in the chain. She was miles away at her job, unaware that her name was being transmitted across state lines. Gordon sent it, Sloane whispered. It wasn't a defense anymore. It was a capitulation. We know Gordon sent it, Benton said. The question is, why are you here? Right now? Today? Benton leaned down, bringing his face level with Sloane's. The system flagged your account lock at 8:42 this morning. You arrived in the lobby at 9:05. That is a 23-minute response time. That is faster than an ambulance. I was in the area, Sloane stammered. No, Benton said. You were deployed. Who called you? Sloane looked at the camera. He looked at the door. He looked at the ruin of his career sitting on the table in the form of a fax log. Who called you? Benton repeated. Gordon, Sloane said. The name came out like a curse. He called me this morning. Early. And what did he say? Benton asked. Exact words. Sloane hesitated. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for what he was about to reveal about the nature of my family. He said, Sloane swallowed. He said he got an alert that you had requested a transcript. He has credit monitoring on your social security number. He saw an inquiry. I felt the blood drain from my face. My father wasn't just holding my documents. He was monitoring my credit like I was a high-risk borrower. He knew I was looking before I even knew what I was looking for. And, Benton pressed, he told me to come down here, Sloan said. He said, go to the IRS office, intercept her, don't let her talk to an agent. Did he say why? Benton asked. Sloan looked down at his hands. He said, Stella creates problems. She is emotional. If she talks to them, she will trigger an audit. Go down there, sit on her, and make sure she sticks to the script. The room went silent. Sit on her. It was a phrasing used for animals. It was a phrasing used for enemies. He didn't say, help her, I said quietly. Sloan didn't answer. He didn't have to. He said, she might cause trouble. Sloan admitted, his voice barely audible. He said you were a liability that needed to be managed. I looked at the man who had been paid with my parents' money to come here and silence me. I felt a strange sense of clarity, the last lingering shred of doubt. The tiny, childish voice that hoped this was all a misunderstanding, that my parents were just desperate and sloppy, vanished. You didn't come here to represent me, Mr. Sloan, I said. You came here to contain me. Sloan looked up. I thought I was helping the family. I thought if we just got the payment plan approved, everyone would survive. I didn't know you were... You didn't know I was real, I said. You thought I was just a signature on a page. But I am real, and I am done being managed. Benton straightened up. He had heard enough. That is it, Benton said. The intent is established. He turned to the door and pressed a button on the wall. Security to interview room C. Sloan stood up, his face pale. Am I under arrest? Not yet, Benton said. That is for the Criminal Investigation Division to determine later, right now. You are being trespassed from this federal facility. Benton picked up his pen and opened the case file. He wrote 2 lines in bold, dark strokes, narrating his actions as he wrote. I am entering a referral to the Office of Professional Responsibility regarding Martin Sloan. Enrolled agent, violation. Attempted unauthorized representation, violation. Failure to exercise due diligence, violation. Complicity in the concealment of identity theft. He closed the folder. This goes into the national database. Mr. Sloan, every time you scan your badge at an IRS office from now on, this note will pop up. You are marked. The door opened. 2 uniformed security officers stood there. Escort this man out of the building, Benton ordered. He is not to stop in the lobby. He is not to use his phone until he is off federal property, and if he returns, you detain him. Sloan grabbed his briefcase. He looked at me one last time. There was no apology in his eyes, only the resentment of a man who had backed the wrong horse. Your father isn't going to stop, Sloan said to me. You don't know what you just started. Get him out, Benton said. The guards took Sloan by the arms, not roughly, but with the firm grip of authority, and marched him out. The door clicked shut again. I was alone with Benton and Ramirez. The silence was different now. It was cleaner. The immediate threat was gone. But the reality of Sloan's words hung in the air. Your father isn't going to stop. He is right about one thing, I said to Benton. My father knows I am here. He knows the containment failed. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I had ignored it during the interview, but I knew the messages were piling up. I unlocked the screen. There were 6 missed calls from Dad and 1 text message from Mom. I opened the text. It had come in 5 minutes ago. Elaine Stewart. Stella, please. Martin says you are being difficult. Just come home. We are making a pot roast. We can talk about this. Don't make a big deal out of nothing. We love you. I felt a wave of nausea. Pot roast. The banality of it was sickening. They were trying to lure me back into the domestic cage with the promise of comfort food, while their hired gun was downstairs trying to legally gag me. Look at this, I said. I handed the phone to Benton. He read the text. He didn't smile. Don't make a big deal out of nothing. Benton read, they call a $247,000 fraud nothing. They want me to come home, I said. They want to get me in the room where there are no cameras and no witnesses. Do not go, Benton said. He handed the phone back to me. And do not reply. Any response you give them now gives them data. It tells them your emotional state. It tells them what you know. Benton walked over to the whiteboard on the wall of the interview room. He picked up a marker. Ms. Stewart, we have stopped the bleeding here at the IRS. The account is frozen. The agent is removed. The affidavit is filed. But this is a multi-front war. You need a network. He drew a circle in the center of the board and wrote IRS. This is us, he said. We handle the tax debt. We investigate the tax fraud. But we cannot protect your civil identity outside of this building. If your father has your social security card and your birth certificate, he can open credit cards. He can take out loans. He can rent apartments. He drew a second circle next to the first one. Police. You need to leave here and go straight to the nearest police precinct, Benton said. You need to file a police report for identity theft and forgery. Not a tax report, a criminal report. My father, he has friends in the local police in Rochester, I said. He plays golf with the sheriff. That is why you do not file it in Rochester, Benton said. You file it here, in Milwaukee, where the crime of receiving the fraudulent notice occurred. You file it based on the jurisdiction where you live. He drew a line connecting the two circles. You need the police report number, Benton explained. The IRS needs it to upgrade your case to confirmed criminal identity theft. The credit bureaus need it to place an extended 7-year fraud alert. He drew a third circle. Credit bureaus. You said your father saw your inquiry? Benton asked. Sloan said he has credit monitoring on me. I said, then you need to blind him, Benton said. You need to call Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. You need to place a freeze. But more than that, you need to change the security questions. He knows your mother's maiden name. He knows your first pet. He knows the street you grew up on. He knows everything, I said. He taught me the answers. Then you pick new answers, Benton said. Make them up. If they ask for your mother's maiden name, you say astronaut. If they ask for your high school mascot, you say pizza. Write them down. Lock him out of the knowledge base. I looked at the board. The 3 circles, IRS, police, credit bureaus, formed a triangle, a shield. This is the verification network, Benton said. If you only do one, he will flank you on the others. If you do all 3, you trap him. The police report validates the IRS claim. The IRS affidavit validates the credit freeze. They support each other. It feels like I am criminalizing my own parents, I said. The weight of it was heavy. You are not, Benton said firmly. You are establishing the truth. They committed the crime. You are just generating the paperwork that describes it. Ramirez stepped forward. I can print the packet for you to take to the police, Ramirez said. I will include the transmission log with the fax header. That proves the documents came from their house. The police will love that. It establishes jurisdiction and origin. Do it, I said. I looked at the text message from my mother again. We love you. Officer Benton, I said. If I file the police report, will they be arrested tonight? Benton capped the marker. No, he said. Financial crimes take months to build. The police will take the report. They will issue a case number. They might call your parents to ask questions, which will scare them. But the handcuffs don't come out until the forensic accountant is done. He looked at me with a serious expression. But the police report does something more immediate. It tells your father that the game has changed. It tells him that this is no longer a family secret. It is a public record. And men like your father, they fear public records more than they fear prison. He fears losing his reputation, I said. He fears the neighbors knowing. Exactly, Benton said. So let's give him something to be afraid of. Ramirez returned with a fresh manila envelope. It was thick. It contained copies of the forged power of attorney, the statement of liability, the fax log, and my new identity theft affidavit. This is your weapon, Ramirez said, handing it to me. Do not lose it, I took the envelope. It felt heavier than the one I had found at my door yesterday, but it was a good weight. It was the weight of ammunition. "Thank you," I said. "Both of you." "We are doing our job," Benton said. "Now go do yours. Go to the station. Lock the credit files. And whatever you do, do not answer that phone." I walked out of the interview room. I felt different than I had when I arrived. I wasn't just a victim of a tax scheme anymore. I was the architect of a counterstrike. I walked through the lobby, past the spot where Martin Sloan had probably stood sweating 20 minutes ago. I pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The city noise rushed in. Cars, buses, wind. I took a deep breath. I had the IRS on my side. Now I needed the law. I pulled out my phone. I didn't look at the texts. I opened the map app and typed in 2 words. Police station. The nearest precinct was 6 blocks away. I started walking. I wasn't going home to eat pot roast. I was going to turn my parents' misunderstanding into a felony complaint. I had my hand on the metal push bar of the exit door, ready to step out into the Milwaukee wind and march toward the police station, when the radio on Agent Ramirez's belt crackled with a burst of static. "Security to Supervisor Benton," the voice on the radio said. It was tight, urgent. "We have a situation at the front desk. A male subject is attempting to bypass the checkpoint. He is shouting. He claims he is the father of the subject in interview room C." I froze. The cold metal of the door handle seeped into my palm. It was not a surprise. Not really. Martin Sloan had been ejected 10 minutes ago. He would have walked straight to his car, pulled out his phone, and made the call. But I had expected my father to be in Rochester, 40 minutes away. I had expected a phone call, a barrage of texts, maybe a frantic drive later in the afternoon. "He is here," I said. My voice was calm, but my stomach knotted. "He must have driven down with Sloan. They were waiting together." Supervisor Benton signaled to Ramirez to stay with me. He turned and walked rapidly toward the double glass doors that separated the secure office hallway from the public waiting area. "Stay here," Benton ordered over his shoulder. "Do not engage until I clear the area." But I could already hear him. Gordon Stewart has a voice that is designed to carry. It is a baritone cultivated in boardrooms and Rotary Club meetings. A voice that assumes authority as a natural right, not a granted privilege. "This is ridiculous." Gordon's voice boomed from the lobby, muffled slightly by the glass, but distinct enough to make my shoulders instinctively tense. "She is my daughter. She is a dependent of my household. I am here to correct a misunderstanding before she ruins her own record." I stepped away from the exit door and moved toward the glass partition. I needed to see him. I needed to see the man who had sold me for $247,000. Through the glass, I saw him. Gordon was wearing his closing suit, charcoal gray, double-vented, with a tie that was a shade too bright for a Tuesday morning. He was leaning over the security desk, pointing a finger at the guard. He looked impressive. He looked like a concerned patriarch fighting for his family, to anyone else in that waiting room. He looked like a hero, to me. He looked like a man whose inventory was trying to escape the warehouse. "Sir, you need to step back," the guard said, putting a hand up. "I will not step back." Gordon shouted. "My daughter is in there. She is confused. She is under extreme duress. I have her medical history right here." He patted his chest pocket. I felt a surge of cold rage. Medical history. He was doubling down on the lie Sloan had planted. He was going to claim I was mentally incompetent to invalidate my affidavit. Benton pushed through the glass doors and entered the lobby. He did not shout. He did not posture. He simply walked into Gordon's space with the absolute, crushing weight of federal jurisdiction. "Mr. Stewart," Benton said. Gordon spun around. He saw the badge. He saw the grim line of Benton's mouth. He adjusted his tie, a reflex of charm kicking in even when he was cornered. "Officer," Gordon said, lowering his voice to a confidential, reasonable tone. "Thank God. Someone with authority. Listen, there has been a terrible mix-up. My tax attorney, Mr. Sloan was just escorted out of here. He told me my daughter, Stella, is making wild accusations. I need to see her, immediately. We need to fix this before it becomes a permanent blemish on her file. Stella Stewart is an adult, Benton said. She is 30 years old. She is not a dependent, and she is not a child. She is legally my dependent regarding the business entities, Gordon insisted, throwing the lie out with practiced confidence. She is the treasurer. She is on my insurance. She lives at my address. She lives in Milwaukee, Benton said. We have verified her lease. We have verified her utility bills. And as of 20 minutes ago, we have verified that she never authorized you to use her name. Gordon's face flushed a darker shade of red. He stepped closer to Benton, trying to use his height to intimidate. You don't understand, Gordon said. Someone has stolen her identity. That is why I'm here. I received an alert. Someone is using Stella's social security number to file false disputes. I came down here to protect her from fraudsters. I watched from the hallway. It was breathtaking. He was taking the very crime he committed, identity theft, and claiming he was the savior. He was trying to confuse the narrative so thoroughly that the IRS would just throw up its hands and freeze everything, which was exactly what he wanted. If there is identity theft, Benton said, Ms. Stewart is the victim. She is the one who files the report, not you. She doesn't know how, Gordon snapped. She is an analyst. She doesn't understand the tax code. I handle the paperwork for the family. I always have. Ask her. Ask her who has her birth certificate. Ask her who has her social security card. We did ask her, Benton said. She told us you have them. She also told us she wants them back. Gordon froze. She said that? She revoked your access. Mr. Stewart, Benton said. She revoked the power of attorney you forged. She signed an affidavit declaring your actions as unauthorized. Gordon looked at the glass doors. He saw me standing there. Our eyes locked. I didn't look away. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to lower my gaze, to apologize for taking up space, to shrink so he could expand. I stood with my feet shoulder-width apart, holding the manila envelope that contained the evidence of his crime. Gordon pushed past Benton. Stella, he called out. His voice cracked. It wasn't the voice of a CEO anymore. It was the voice of a father losing control of his household. Stella, come out here. Tell them to stop this nonsense. Benton moved to intercept, but I pushed the door open. Let him speak, I said to Benton. I stepped into the lobby. The air was different here, charged with the murmurs of the other people waiting, the tension of a public scene. Gordon rushed toward me, stopping just short of the tape line on the floor when the security guard stepped forward. Stella, Gordon said, breathing hard. What are you doing? Martin called me. He said you signed a revocation. Do you have any idea what you have done? The accounts are going to be levied. The business will fold. You are destroying everything we worked for. Everything you worked for, I said, and everything you spent. It's a loan, Gordon hissed, glancing around to see if anyone was listening. It was a bridge loan using the payroll tax float. Every business does it. We were going to pay it back next quarter. I just needed a name on the paper to satisfy the computer system. It was a technicality. Why are you acting like I murdered someone? You stole $247,000 in my name, I said. And then you told the government I was crazy so I wouldn't find out. Gordon waved his hand dismissively. That was Martin's idea. Just a placeholder. A strategy to buy time until the cash flow hit. Look, Stella, you're emotional. I can see it. You're shaking. You're vindictive because I missed your birthday last year? Is that what this is? You're willing to send your mother to the poorhouse because of a grudge? He was building the frame. Vindictive, unstable, grudge. He was trying to perform for the audience, for Benton, for Ramirez, for the security guard. He wanted them to see a bratty daughter throwing a tantrum, not a whistleblower exposing a crime. I am not vindictive, I said. My voice was level, projecting clearly in the quiet lobby. And I am not emotional. I am factual. I lifted the manila envelope. I have the fax log. Dad, the one from your home office, October 10th, 8:30 in the morning. It shows you sent the forged power of attorney to Martin Sloan. Gordon's eyes flicked to the envelope. He recognized the heft of it. He knew what a paper trail looked like. I have the signature analysis, I continued. I have the IP address of the submission. And I have the text message you sent Martin telling him I was on board when you had never spoken to me about it. I was going to tell you, Gordon insisted. I was going to tell you at Christmas. Once the business turned around, I was going to pay off the debt, remove your name, and give you a bonus, a thank you gift. It was going to be a surprise. A surprise felony, I said. Gordon's face twisted. He reached into his briefcase, the same expensive leather as Sloane's, and pulled out a thick stack of papers. You want facts? Gordon said. I have facts. I have the operating agreement. I have the minutes of the meeting where you were appointed treasurer. I typed them myself. I have the emails. He took a step toward me, holding out the papers. He wanted me to take them. He wanted me to touch them. It was a classic move. If I took the papers, I accepted the premise. If I took the papers, I entered his negotiation. Do not hand them to me, I said sharply. Gordon stopped. I turned to Agent Ramirez, who was standing right beside me. Agent Ramirez, I said, this man claims to have documents relevant to the investigation of Stewart Community Care, LLC. He claims to have meeting minutes and operating agreements that name me as an officer. Yes, Ramirez said. I request that you take those documents into evidence immediately, I said. Scan them, log them. If they are forged, I want them in the federal record. If he manufactured meeting minutes, I want a forensic timestamp on them. I looked back at Gordon. Give them to the agent. Dad, if they are real, you have nothing to worry about. If you typed them yesterday and backdated them, well, handing them to a federal agent is a separate crime. It is called submission of false documents. Gordon's hand wavered. He held the stack of papers in midair. He looked at Ramirez, who had his hand out, ready to receive the evidence. Gordon knew. He knew that the meeting minutes were fiction. He knew he had typed them on his laptop at the kitchen table while drinking scotch, inventing a reality where I was a willing participant. If he handed them to me, it was just a lie between father and daughter. If he handed them to Ramirez, it was a felony. He pulled the papers back. He shoved them into his briefcase and snapped it shut. This is bureaucratic entrapment, Gordon muttered. It is procedure, Benton said, stepping forward. Mr. Stewart, you just attempted to provide exculpatory evidence and then withdrew it when informed it would be subject to forensic analysis. That is noted. Gordon looked trapped. The physical space of the lobby seemed to shrink around him. The security guard was watching him. The receptionist was watching him. His daughter was watching him, and she wasn't blinking. He changed tactics. The anger evaporated, replaced instantly by a look of wounded, weary love. It was a transformation I had seen 1,000 times. It was the face he wore when he forgot to pick me up from school. The face he wore when he spent my college fund on a bad investment. He slumped his shoulders. He looked smaller, older. Stella, he said softly, honey, please, can we just go get a coffee? Just you and me? Forget the agents. Forget the lawyers. I'm your dad. I changed your diapers. I taught you how to ride a bike. He took a step closer, ignoring the guard. I am trying to protect you, Gordon said. The world is hard. This debt. It's a monster. I took it on so you wouldn't have to worry about money. I put your name on the company so you would have an asset, something to inherit one day. I did it for your future. It was a powerful pull. The gravity of the shared history, the memory of him teaching me to ride a bike, his hand on the back of the seat, promising he wouldn't let go. But then I remembered the letter. Amount due, $247,000. He hadn't held the seat. He had pushed me into traffic to save himself. You aren't protecting me, I said. You are using me as a shield. I am your father, Gordon pleaded. Doesn't that mean anything? Family helps family. We bury the bodies together. We don't call the police on each other. That is the problem, I said. You think family is a criminal conspiracy? It's loyalty, Gordon shouted, his voice cracking again. It's loyalty, Stella. If you walk out of here and file that report, you kill your mother. Do you hear me? The stress will kill her, and it will be your fault. The accusation hung in the air. It will be your fault. The ultimate weapon, the weapon he had used to keep me quiet, to keep me compliant, to keep me coming back for holidays where I felt like a stranger. I looked at Benton. He was waiting. He wasn't interfering. He knew I had to do this part myself. I looked back at Gordon. No, I said. It won't be my fault. It will be the consequence of your actions. I did it for us, Gordon cried. You did it for you, I said. You wanted the lifestyle. You wanted the country club membership. You wanted the big house in Rochester. And when the money ran out, you stole my credit to pay for it. I took a step closer to him, stopping just inches from the tape line. You keep saying you want to protect me, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that only he and the agents could hear. You call it protection, but you use love like a contract. You think that because you fed me and clothed me, you own the rights to my life. You think my name belongs to you. Gordon stared at me. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. But today, I said, that contract is void. You defaulted. Dad, you broke the terms when you forged my signature. I turned to Benton. Officer Benton, is there anything else you need from me here? No, Ms. Stewart, Benton said. You are free to go. Good, I said. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder. I looked at Gordon one last time. He looked like a statue of a man, crumbling from the inside out. He was holding his briefcase like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I am going to the police station now, I said clearly. I am filing a report for identity theft. I suggest you call a lawyer, a real one, not Martin Sloan. Stella, don't, Gordon whispered. It was a genuine plea this time. The reality was setting in. Goodbye, Dad, I said. I turned my back on him. It was the hardest physical movement I had ever made. Every muscle in my body wanted to turn back, to apologize, to fix it, to be the good daughter, but the folder in my hand was heavy with the truth. I walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard Gordon start to shout again, but it was desperate noise now, lacking authority. She doesn't mean it. She's confused. Officer, stop her. Mr. Stewart? Benton's voice cut through, sharp and final. You need to leave federal property, now. I pushed the door open. The wind hit my face. It was cold, biting Milwaukee air, but it felt clean. I walked down the concrete steps. I didn't look back at the glass facade of the building. I didn't look to see if he was watching me. I walked toward the street, toward the police station, toward the only thing that mattered anymore, the record. I returned to my apartment at 2:30 in the afternoon. The door locked behind me with a heavy, mechanical thud that felt different than it had yesterday. The lock was a fragile barrier against a world I didn't understand. Today, it was the seal on a war room. I did not turn on the TV. I did not change out of my suit. I did not make coffee. I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and placed the manila folder I had received from Agent Ramirez on the left side and the fresh, carbon copy pink sheet of the police report I had just filed on the right side. I had the paper trail. Now, I had to weaponize it. I had 4 tasks to complete before the sun went down. If I stopped, if I let myself think about the look on my father's face in the lobby, I would crumble. So I didn't think, I executed. Task 1. The federal affidavit. I navigated to the IRS portal. I pulled up Form 14039, the identity theft affidavit. I had filled out a paper version with Ramirez, but Benton had advised me to file the digital duplicate to trigger the automated tracking immediately. I typed in the numbers, case number from the police report, 269940, officer name, Sergeant Miller, Precinct, District 1, Milwaukee. The form asked for a description of the event. I didn't use emotional language. I wrote with the cold precision of an analyst. Suspects: Gordon Stewart and Elaine Stewart used my personal identifiable information to list me as the treasurer of Stewart Community Care, LLC, without my knowledge or consent. Suspects forged my signature on a statement of financial condition and a power of attorney to conceal a payroll tax liability of $247,000. Suspects attempted to divert federal correspondence to their home address to prevent detection. I attached the scanned PDF of the fax log Benton had given me. I attached the comparison of the signatures. I hit submit. The screen flashed green. Submission received. It was the first brick in the wall. Task 2. The credit freeze. I opened 3 tabs in my browser: Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. My father had said he monitored my credit. That meant he had the login credentials. He probably created the accounts himself years ago, using a password he knew I would never guess, because he never told me he did it. I clicked Forgot Password on all 3 sites. I used the Verify Identity option. I answered the questions only I would know: the amount of my current car payment, the street of my previous apartment. I got in. There it was. An inquiry from Stewart Community Care dated 6 months ago. A soft pull for background monitoring. He had been watching me like a hawk watching a field mouse. I initiated a total freeze on all 3 files. Then came the most important part: the security questions. Mother's maiden name. My father knew this. Obviously, it was the key to half the locks in my life. I deleted Miller. I typed helicopter, high school mascot. He knew this. He was at every football game, shaking hands in the stands. I deleted Vikings. I typed submarine, name of first pet. I deleted Buster. I typed concrete. I wrote the new answers down in a physical notebook. I did not save them in a digital file. I was locking him out of my history. If he tried to call the bureaus pretending to be me, pretending to be the distressed daughter who forgot her password, he would give the real answers, and the system would flag him as an imposter. Task 3. The digital purge. I went through my bank accounts, my email, my retirement fund at work. I changed every password. I enabled 2-factor authentication. But I didn't just set it to my phone number. I set it to an authenticator app that lived only on my physical device. My father was tech-savvy enough to clone a SIM card if he was desperate, or to social engineer a phone carrier, but he couldn't clone the phone in my hand. Task 4. The professional strike. I pulled up the website for the Office of Professional Responsibility, the governing body that oversees enrolled agents like Martin Sloan. I drafted a formal complaint. Complaint against practitioner Martin Sloan. License number 89204. Mr. Sloan admitted in a recorded federal interview on October 16, 2026, that he accepted a power of attorney without witnessing the signature or verifying the identity of the taxpayer. Mr. Sloan further admitted to filing a client distress hold request containing false medical claims at the behest of a third party. I didn't need to exaggerate. The transcript of the interview would do the work for me. Martin Sloan had tried to save his own skin by throwing my father under the bus. But he had still driven the getaway car. I was going to make sure he never drove again. I hit send. It was 5:15 in the evening. The sun was setting, casting long orange rectangles across my living room floor. I sat back. My fingers ached. I wasn't done. Benton had said I needed to find the edges of the lie. If they had used my name for the tax debt, where else was I? I opened my email archive. I searched for Dad. I searched for Mom. I searched for sign this. Nothing obvious came up. They were careful. They preferred phone calls where nothing was written down. Then I searched for photo. A result popped up from 14 months ago. An email from Elaine Stewart. Subject line, insurance thing. I opened it. Hi, honey. So sorry to bother you at work. Dad is updating the company health insurance policy, and since you are technically on the backup beneficiary list, just in case anything happens to us, the broker needs a clear photo of your driver's license, front and back. Can you snap a pic and send it? Love you. Mom. I read it twice. Backup beneficiary list. It sounded so benevolent. It sounded like they were looking out for me, making sure I would get the life insurance payout if they died. I checked my sent folder. There was my reply. Dated 20 minutes later. Sure, here you go. Attached were high-resolution photos of my driver's license. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. They didn't need it for insurance. They needed it for the notary, to open a business bank account, or to file the initial treasurer paperwork. The bank usually requires a copy of the officer's ID. Since I wasn't there to hand it over, they needed a clean copy to slip into the file. They had tricked me into sending them the tools of my own framing, and they had wrapped it in "Love You." I printed the email. I printed the attachment. It went into the folder. It was proof of premeditation. It proved this wasn't a sudden emergency 6 months ago. It was a plan hatched over a year ago. I needed one more layer of protection. The workplace. I worked at Crestline Analytics Group. We handled sensitive data. Background checks were part of our hiring process. If my father got desperate, and I knew he was desperate, he might try to blow up my life by calling my boss. He might claim I was stealing data, or that I was mentally unstable, or that I was under federal investigation. He would try to make me unemployable so I would have to come home. I looked at the clock. 5:30. HR would be gone, but the general counsel, a sharp woman named Sarah Jenkins, usually stayed late. I drafted an email. Subject: confidential/personnel security update. Dear Ms. Jenkins, I am writing to proactively inform you of a personal legal matter involving identity theft. I have recently discovered that my personal information was used without my consent to list me as an officer of a family-owned business, which is currently under IRS investigation. I have filed a police report, case number attached, and an affidavit with the IRS Fraud Division. I am the victim in this matter, not the perpetrator. However, due to the familial nature of the dispute, I anticipate potential harassment or attempts to contact me at my place of employment by the estranged family members. If Crestline Analytics receives any communications regarding my mental health, legal status, or character from Gordon Stewart, Elaine Stewart, or Martin Sloan, please treat them as malicious attempts to discredit a witness in an active federal investigation. I am happy to provide copies of the filed police reports for my personnel file. Sincerely, Stella Stewart. I pressed send. It was a risk. Telling your employer you are involved in a federal fraud case is never safe, but letting them find out from a screaming Gordon Stewart would be fatal. I controlled the narrative. I framed it as witness intimidation before it even happened. Finally, I needed a lawyer, not for the tax case. Benton and Ramirez were handling that. I needed a civil lawyer to build the wall. I searched for civil litigation Milwaukee harassment. I found a firm that specialized in family disputes. I typed a request for a consultation the next morning. I need a cease and desist order sent to 3 individuals immediately. I also need to prepare a civil suit for damages regarding credit fraud and legal fees. I have a full paper trail. I closed the laptop. My apartment was silent. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt safe. I went to the kitchen. I made a sandwich. I ate it standing up. My phone, which I had left on the counter face down, buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it started a long, sustained vibration indicating a call. I looked at the screen. Mom. I didn't answer. I didn't decline it. I just let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then Dad called. Then Home called. They were cycling through the phones, passing the receiver back and forth. Panic rising in the house in Rochester. They realized I wasn't coming for pot roast. They realized Martin Sloan hadn't fixed it. I turned the phone off completely. I slept that night with the manila folder on my nightstand, next to a glass of water. It was the best sleep I had had in 6 months. 6 days later, I walked to the bank of mailboxes in the lobby of my building. It was a Tuesday again, exactly 1 week since the nightmare had started. I inserted my key and turned it. The small metal door swung open. There was a stack of junk mail. Flyers for pizza, a catalog, and in the middle, a white envelope, Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service. My breath hitched. I pulled it out. I looked at the address window. Stella Marie Stewart, 115 Lakeview Drive, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was addressed to me. At my real home, I ripped it open right there in the lobby. Dear Ms. Stewart, we have received your Form 14039, Identity Theft. Affidavit, we have placed a protective marker on your tax account. Based on the evidence provided, including the disputed signature and the police report filed with the Milwaukee Police Department, the service has suspended all collection activities against you regarding the trust fund recovery penalty for Stewart Community Care, LLC. Your address of record has been locked to the address listed above. No further changes will be accepted without in-person verification. This case has been referred to the Criminal Investigation Division for review. I lowered the letter. They had tried to divert my mail. They had tried to hide the notices. They had tried to silence me. But here it was. The government was talking to me, not them. The loop was closed. I took a picture of the letter. I didn't send it to my parents. I didn't send it to Martin Sloan. I sent it to the civil lawyer I had hired 3 days ago. We have the confirmation. I typed, "Send the cease and desist letters, today." I walked back to the elevator, holding the letter. It wasn't over. I knew that. The criminal investigation would take months. My parents would scream, and cry, and threaten. But as the elevator doors closed, I knew one thing for sure. The shadow play was over. They were no longer the puppet masters pulling the strings of a distressed daughter. They were suspects, and I was the witness who had just turned on the lights. The transcripts arrived on a Thursday, delivered via a secure encrypted email from Agent Ramirez. It was a massive file, over 200 pages of financial history that detailed the slow, agonizing rot of Stewart Community Care, LLC. I sat at my desk, the glow of the monitor illuminating the dark living room, and began to read. What I found was not just financial mismanagement, it was theft. The $247,000 was not a result of a bad year or a lost contract. It was the trust fund tax. For 18 months, my parents had deducted Social Security and Medicare taxes from their employees' paychecks, money that belonged to the nurses and aides who bathed the elderly and changed bedpans, and instead of sending it to the Treasury, they had kept it. They used it to pay the lease on their Mercedes. They used it to pay the country club dues. They used it to maintain the facade of success while the foundation rotted. But the documents revealed something even darker: the motive for using me. On page 54, I found a rejection letter from a commercial lender, dated 6 months ago. Stewart Community Care had applied for a $500,000 line of credit to restructure. The bank had denied them because of the outstanding tax lien. Then, 3 weeks later, there was a note in the corporate file: taxpayer requesting installment agreement, designating new responsible officer to facilitate compliance. It wasn't just about hiding the debt. It was a strategic maneuver. Banks will often lend to a company with a tax debt if that company is in a good-standing payment plan with the IRS. By throwing me under the bus, by assigning the liability to a new treasurer with a clean credit history, my parents could present a sanitized face to the bank. They weren't just using me as a shield, they were using me as bait to hook a new loan, essentially trying to borrow their way out of a hole by digging a new one through my credit score. My phone rang. It was a Milwaukee area code I didn't recognize. I hesitated. Benton had told me not to answer unknown numbers, but I had also updated my voicemail to state clearly that I was recording all calls. I picked up. "This is Stella." "Is this Stella Stewart, Gordon's daughter?" The voice was female, hesitant, and sounded tired. "Who is this?" I asked, my finger hovering over the record button. "My name is Brenda. I used to be the office manager at Stewart Community Care. I quit 4 months ago." I sat up straighter. "I am listening. Brenda." "I saw the police cruiser at your parents' house yesterday," Brenda said. "My sister lives down the street in Rochester. She said the police were serving papers or asking questions. Word gets around." "I filed a report," I said honestly. "Why are you calling me?" "Because I knew he was going to do it," Brenda said. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I heard him, Stella, back in July. We were in his office. And I told him the payroll tax notices were piling up. I told him the IRS was threatening to levy the accounts. He told me not to worry about it. What exactly did he say? I asked. He laughed, Brenda said. He leaned back in that big leather chair of his and said, I have a silent partner coming in, someone with a spotless record who's going to sign the papers and get the heat off us. I asked him who would be stupid enough to sign for a debt that big, and he said, my daughter, she trusts me. She'll sign a napkin if I tell her it's a birthday card. I felt the air leave my lungs. She'll sign a napkin if I tell her it's a birthday card. It was the most humiliating, accurate description of our relationship I had ever heard. He banked on my love being a form of blindness. Brenda, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. Would you be willing to swear to that in an affidavit? If it means he finally faces consequences for bouncing my last paycheck, Brenda said. Absolutely. Tell your lawyer to call me. She hung up. I added her name to my list. Witness, Brenda. Testimony, premeditation and malice, as if the universe wanted to test my resolve. My phone buzzed again 10 minutes later. This time, it was a text from my mother. It was a long block of gray text. Elaine Stewart. Stella. Please, I know you are angry. I know this looks bad. But you have to understand, Dad didn't do this to hurt you. He did it to save the family. We were going to lose the house. We were going to lose the business. He thought if we could just buy 6 months, we could pay it all back and remove your name before you ever knew. It was a desperate move, yes, but it was done out of love. We protected you from the stress of knowing how bad things were. Please, don't let strangers destroy us. Come home. Let's sign the papers to fix this internally. I stared at the screen. Done out of love. That was their defense. Theft was love. Fraud was protection. Lying to the federal government and ruining my financial future was just a desperate move. There was no, I'm sorry. There was no, we were wrong. There was only, you have to understand. I realized then that they would never confess. They would never admit guilt because, in their minds, they were the victims of a harsh economy. And I was just the ungrateful daughter refusing to play her part in their survival story. If I wanted to win this, I couldn't wait for them to break. I had to trick them into handing me the hammer. I composed a text back. I kept it neutral. I stripped every ounce of emotion out of it. Stella. I am trying to understand. It is a lot to process. Before I agree to meet or sign anything, I need to see exactly what has already been filed. I don't have copies of the payment plan or the financial statement you sent. Send me the files so I can read them tonight. I waited. It was a gamble. If they were smart, they would talk to a lawyer who would tell them to stop communicating, but they weren't talking to lawyers. They were talking to Martin Sloan, who was currently fighting for his own license, and they were talking to each other in an echo chamber of panic. 3 minutes later, my email chimed. Subject, FWD, IRS docs/Stella copies. From Gordon Stewart, attachment, scan_packet_final_v2.pdf. Here is everything, honey, read it. You will see it is just standard boilerplate. We can amend it all once we sit down. I opened the email. I didn't look at the PDF content immediately. I looked at the metadata. Gordon had been careless, or maybe just arrogant. He hadn't sent the flattened, final PDF that went to the IRS. He had sent the file from his sent folder that he had emailed to Martin Sloan initially. I right-clicked on the file. Properties. Details. Author, Gordon Stewart. Date. Created, October 9th, 2026. 11:30 p.m. Last modified, October 10th, 2026. 8:15 a.m. I opened the document in a PDF editor that allowed me to see the layer history. And there it was. On the statement of financial condition, in the field for assets, there were previous values that had been deleted and overwritten. He had initially listed the company cars, then deleted them to make the company look poorer, to qualify for a lower monthly payment. But the smoking gun was the signature page. The digital stamp on the signature image file, the picture of my forged signature that he had pasted onto the line, had a file name, Stella_Xmas_card_sig_crop, JPG. I stared at it. He hadn't even practiced forging it. He had scanned an old Christmas card I had sent them, cropped my signature, and pasted it onto a federal tax document. He literally used my love against me. A card where I had written love. Stella was the source code for his crime. I took a screenshot. I saved the file. I backed it up to 3 different cloud servers. Evidence. Source of forgery. Confirmed. I spent the rest of the night building the timeline of fraud. I used a large sheet of poster paper I had bought, taping it to my living room wall. July 15th. Brenda witnesses Gordon bragging about the silent partner, August 1st. Bank denies the loan due to tax lien. September 1st. Mother asks for my ID photo for insurance. October 9th. Gordon creates the fraudulent PDF using the Christmas card signature. October 10th. Gordon faxes the packet to Martin Sloan. October 16th. I receive the notice. October 17th. I file the affidavit. It was a perfect, unassailable circle. Every date was backed by a server log, a text message, or a witness. The next morning, I went to the office of the civil attorney I had hired. Jonathan Vance. Vance was a sharp, aggressive litigator who specialized in what he called financial divorce, usually between spouses. But he found my case fascinatingly tragic. I laid out the new evidence: Brenda's testimony and the Christmas card file. Vance looked at the screen, then at me. "This is brutal," Vance said. "Using a holiday card to manufacture a federal felony? Juries hate tax fraud, Stella, but they hate betrayal even more. This destroys any implied consent defense they might try to cook up." "I want to file the civil suit," I said. "I don't want to wait for the IRS criminal investigation to finish. I want to sue them now." "We can," Vance said. "We sue for identity theft, fraud, misappropriation of likeness, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We ask for compensatory damages for your legal fees and your credit monitoring, and we ask for punitive damages." "Do it," I said. "There is something else," Vance said. "The cease and desist letter I sent yesterday, we got a response, not from a lawyer, but from your father." Vance slid a piece of paper across his mahogany desk. It was a handwritten note, scrawled on Stewart Community Care letterhead. "To Mr. Vance, tell your client, my daughter, that we are holding a family meeting on November 3rd at the house in Rochester to finalize the business restructuring. If she does not attend, she forfeits her share of the family trust. This is a private matter." "He is threatening to disinherit me," I said. Reading the note, "He is trying to bribe me with money that doesn't exist." "November 3rd, Vance said, checking his calendar. "That is next Tuesday." I felt a strange alignment of the stars. "November 3rd is also the date Agent Ramirez gave me," I said. "The IRS has scheduled the final determination conference for the dispute. They fast-tracked it because of the police report." "Where is the IRS meeting?" Vance asked. "Here in Milwaukee," I said. "At the Federal Building, 10 a.m.? "And your father wants you in Rochester on the same day," Vance noted. "He thinks he controls the schedule," I said. "He thinks if he demands a meeting, I have to choose between the IRS and him. He thinks I'll be too scared to show up at the Federal Building if he's threatening to cut me out of the will." "What do you want to do?" Vance asked. I looked at the handwritten note. If she does not attend, she forfeits her share. "I am going to the IRS meeting," I said, "and I want you to reply to this note. Tell him I will not be in Rochester on November 3rd. Tell him I will be where the truth is." Vance smiled. "I will draft it. Client declines invitation to conspiracy meeting due to prior engagement with federal law enforcement." "Perfect," I said. I left Vance's office and walked into the crisp autumn air. The city felt sharper, clearer. I went to work. I sat at my desk at Crestline Analytics. I did my job. I analyzed data. I found patterns in chaos. At lunch, I checked my personal email. There was a notification from Experian. Alert, new inquiry. Blocked. Someone had tried to apply for a credit card in my name at 10:15 that morning. A high-limit business card. My father was desperate. The walls were closing in. The cash was gone, and he was trying to punch one last hole in the hull of my life to keep his ship afloat. But the freeze I had placed, the helicopter, submarine, concrete answers, had stopped him. He had hit the wall I built. I imagined him sitting in his study, staring at a application-denied screen, realizing that his keys no longer worked. I felt a grim satisfaction, but also a deep, aching sadness. He wasn't stopping, even with the police report, even with the lawyer. He was still trying to steal from me. He would steal from me until the handcuffs were on his wrists. The realization hardened the last soft place in my heart. There was no saving them. There was only stopping them. I spent the weekend preparing. I organized my folder. I labeled my exhibits. Exhibit A, the IRS notice. Exhibit B, the police report. Exhibit C, the forged power of attorney. Exhibit D, the Christmas card. Signature analysis. Exhibit E, the mother's insurance email. Exhibit F, the witness affidavit from Brenda. I bought a new suit, navy blue, sharp, a suit for a woman who is the CEO of her own life, on Monday night, the night before the hearing. My phone rang one last time. It was Gordon. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to the message later, sitting in my apartment with the lights off. Stella. His voice was slurred. He was drinking. You win, okay? You win. Just don't show up tomorrow. If you show up at the IRS, they will take everything. The house, the cars, your mother's jewelry. Just stay home. Tell them you made a mistake. Tell them you signed it and forgot. I'll pay it back. I swear. Just give me 1 year. Don't be the person who sends her father to prison. You aren't that cold. I know you. You're my little girl. I sat in the dark, listening to the man who had cropped my love out of a Christmas card to commit fraud, ask for mercy. I am not your little girl, I whispered to the empty room. I am the responsible party, and tomorrow, I am going to be responsible. I deleted the message. I went to the wall, took down the timeline, and folded it neatly. Tomorrow was November 3rd, the day the secrets ended, the day the paper trail turned into a cage. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. I wanted to be at the federal building before the doors even opened. I wanted to be waiting for them. November 3rd was a Tuesday, cold and bright, with a sky the color of polished steel. It was the kind of day that felt like a judgment. I arrived at the federal building at 9:30 in the morning. I was not alone this time. Walking beside me was Mr. Henderson, a tax attorney I had hired 2 days after filing my police report. He was everything Martin Sloan was not. He was quiet, meticulous, and he did not make promises he could not keep. He simply carried a briefcase full of authenticated affidavits and waited for the truth to do the work. We went through security. I saw the guard who had stopped my father the week before. He nodded to me, a small gesture of recognition. I walked through the metal detector without beeping. I had nothing to hide. The meeting was held in Conference Room B, a space with a large window overlooking the city of Milwaukee. Supervisor Benton was there, Agent Ramirez was there, and there was a third person, a woman from the IRS Office of Chief Counsel. I sat down. I placed my hands on the table. They were steady. Ms. Stewart, Supervisor Benton began. His voice was as level as the horizon. We have completed our review of the identity theft affidavit filed on October 17th, along with the supporting documentation provided by the Milwaukee Police Department under case number 2-69940. The room was silent. I could hear the hum of the ventilation system. The service has determined that the assignment of the trust fund recovery penalty to your Social Security number was based on fraudulent documentation, Benton said. The signature on the statement of financial condition has been ruled a forgery. The power of attorney granting authority to Martin Sloan has been voided ab initio. meaning it never legally existed. He slid a single sheet of paper across the polished wood table. "This is letter 4674C, Benton said. "It is the official determination letter. It states that you are not the responsible party for Stewart Community Care, LLC. The assessment of $247,000 has been removed from your personal account history." I picked up the paper. It was light. It weighed less than an ounce. But as I held it, I felt a physical sensation of release, as if a heavy chain had been unhooked from around my chest. The number, $247,000, was no longer a cage. It was just a number again. "Thank you," I said. My voice was quiet. "The freeze on the business accounts, however, remains in effect," the woman from Chief Counsel added. Her tone was sharp. "Because the designated responsible party was fraudulent. The business is now considered to be operating without a compliant officer. We are initiating full collection actions against the entity and its actual officers. Gordon and Elaine Stewart, effective immediately." "I understand," I said. "This case has been formally referred to the Criminal Investigation Division," Benton said, looking me in the eye. "We cannot discuss the timeline or the specific charges with you from this point forward. You are now a witness. If they contact you, you document it. But as far as the civil debt is concerned, you are free." I stood up. I shook Mr. Henderson's hand. I shook Agent Ramirez's hand. "Good luck, Ms. Stewart," Benton said as I reached the door. "Keep your records." "I will," I said. I walked out of the conference room. I walked down the hallway where my father had shouted at me. I walked through the lobby where he had tried to hand me the fake meeting minutes. I pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped out into the cold November air. I took a deep breath. It tasted like freedom. Then, my phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen. I knew I shouldn't answer. Benton had warned me, but I needed to hear it. I needed to hear the sound of the reality hitting them. I slid the bar to answer. "Hello? Stella?" My mother's voice was a jagged scream. She was sobbing, a hysterical, gasping sound that I had never heard from her before. "They froze it. They froze the operating account. The payroll checks bounced this morning. The nurses are walking out. Stella, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything, Mom," I said. "The IRS did it." "You have to call them," she cried. "You have to tell them it was a mistake. Dad is in the study throwing up. He says it is over. He says they are going to take the house. Stella, please, we are your parents. You can't let them take the house." She wasn't crying because she was sorry. She wasn't crying because she had almost ruined my life. She was crying because the consequences had finally arrived at her front door. "I can't stop them. Mom," I said. "I am not the treasurer, remember?" "Don't be cruel," she shrieked. "We gave you everything. We raised you. How can you be so cold?" "I learned it from you," I said. "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up. I blocked the number. A minute later, the phone buzzed again. It was a restricted number. I knew it was Gordon. He was calling from a burner phone, or perhaps from the neighbor's house. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it as I walked toward my car. "Stella." His voice was different. It wasn't the booming voice of the CEO. It wasn't the pleading voice of the father. It was the desperate, frantic voice of a co-conspirator trying to cut a deal. "Listen to me. Don't hang up. I can fix this. I have a buyer. I have a guy who wants to buy the client list. He is offering cash, under the table. If you call the IRS and retract the affidavit, just for 2 weeks, I can sell the list. I'll give you half. Do you hear me? $100,000, cash, just for you. We can split it. Nobody has to know." I stopped walking. He was trying to bribe me. He was offering to cut me in on the loot of a sinking ship. He still didn't get it. He thought this was a transaction. He thought I was angry because I hadn't been paid enough for my identity. I didn't delete the voicemail. I saved it. Evidence Exhibit G, attempted bribery. I drove to my lawyer's office. Jonathan Vance was waiting for me. "We have a situation," Vance said as I walked in. "Your father is in the lobby of my building. He knows you are meeting me here. He is refusing to leave until he speaks to you." "Is he alone?" I asked. "He is alone," Vance said. "He looks unwell." "I will see him," I said. "I advise against it," Vance said. "You have the letter. You won." "I need him to say it," I said. "I need to look him in the eye one last time. I need to make sure he knows that I'm not afraid of him," Vance sighed. "Fine, but we do it in the coffee shop downstairs. Public place, witnesses, and I sit at the next table." We went downstairs. Gordon was sitting at a small round table near the window. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 7 days. His suit was wrinkled. His tie was loose. He was staring into a black coffee as if it contained the answers to the universe. I sat down across from him. He looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. "You came," he said. "I came," I said. "Did you get my message?" he asked. "About the buyer?" "I got it," I said. "I saved it for the police." Gordon winced. He looked around the coffee shop, paranoid. "Stella, don't be like that. I am trying to save us, both of us. The IRS isn't going to stop with the company. They are coming for the personal assets. They are going to take the house in Rochester. Where will your mother live?" "She can get an apartment," I said. "Like I did." Gordon reached across the table. He tried to take my hand. I pulled it back, placing it in my lap. "I have a plan," Gordon whispered. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was wrinkled. "Look, I typed this up. It is a retroactive agreement. It says you agreed to be treasurer pending a formal review. If you sign this, just this one piece of paper, we can show it to Benton. We can say the forgery was just a misunderstanding, a placeholder until you could sign the real thing. It gets the fraud charges dropped. It turns it back into a civil debt." He pushed the paper toward me. He pushed a pen toward me. "Just sign it." "Stella," he said. His voice was shaking. "Just sign the paper, and everything goes back to normal. We can be a family again. We can have Christmas. I'll buy you that car you wanted." I looked at the paper. It was a lie. It was a confession disguised as a contract. If I signed it, I would be admitting to the debt. I would be taking the $247,000 bullet to save him from prison. "You want me to go to jail for you," I said. "No," Gordon said. "No jail. Just a payment plan. You have a clean record. They will go easy on you. Me? If they get me for fraud, I go away for 5 years. Stella, I am 60 years old. I can't go to prison." "You should have thought of that before you cropped my signature from a Christmas card," I said. Gordon froze. "You know about that?" "I know everything," I said. "I know about the insurance email. I know about Martin Sloan. I know about the loan rejection." I stood up. "I am not signing your trap. Dad," I said. "I am signing the truth." "What truth?" Gordon spat, his facade crumbling into anger. "The truth is you are an ungrateful child who is sending her father to ruin." "The truth," I said, looking down at him, "is that I am the only steward who pays her own bills." I turned and walked away. "Stella," he shouted. People turned to look. "Stella, you can't walk away from family." I kept walking. I walked past Jonathan Vance, who nodded at me and stood up to follow. I walked out of the coffee shop. I walked into the sunlight. I never spoke to him again. The aftermath came not as a flood, but as a steady, reconstructive stream. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from the credit bureaus. My file had been scrubbed. The inquiries from Stewart Community Care were gone. My score jumped back up to 780. 3 weeks later, I received a notice from the Office of Professional Responsibility. Martin Sloan's enrolled agent status had been suspended pending a full investigation. He would never file a tax return for another human being again. 4 weeks later, Jonathan Vance filed the civil suit. Stella Stewart versus Gordon Stewart and Elaine Stewart. We sought damages for legal fees, emotional distress, and identity theft. We also secured a permanent injunction preventing them from using my name, my image, or my credit for any purpose. They didn't fight it. They couldn't. They were too busy fighting the federal prosecutors who were now picking through the carcass of their company. I didn't go to the house in Rochester for Christmas. I didn't go for New Year's. Instead, I spent New Year's Eve in my apartment. It was quiet. The snow was falling outside my window, blanketing Milwaukee in white. I sat at my desk. I had a new filing cabinet. In the front drawer, there was a single, thick folder. I took my label maker. I typed a new label. I didn't label it family. I didn't label it betrayal. And I didn't label it past. I labeled it records. I stuck the label onto the tab. Inside were the police report, the IRS determination letter, the court order, and the cease and desist. These were not just papers. They were the boundary lines of my existence. They were the proof that I belonged to myself. I closed the drawer. The metal clicked shut. I walked to my bedroom and turned off the light. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't waiting for a letter to slide under the door. I wasn't waiting for a phone call that would demand more than I could give. My parents were still out there, somewhere, living in the shadow of the laws they had broken. But they were no longer living in my head. They had been evicted by the truth. I pulled the covers up. I closed my eyes. And for the first time, in a long, long time, I slept without dreaming of envelopes. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a long journey from that first terrifying letter to the final closing of the file. And I hope it reminded you that the truth is the only shield that really holds up. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from a busy city, a quiet room, or maybe on your commute? Please leave a comment below and let me know your location and what you would have done if you were in Stella's shoes. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of justice and turning the tables, please make sure to subscribe to the channel Lucy Revenge Stories. Don't forget to like this video and smash that hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Stay safe, keep your records, and I'll see you in the next story.